Thank you, everyone, and welcome. I think this signifies that summer is officially over. And the House DOT Modernization AdHoc Committee is called to order, and I thank everyone. I love that we've got a packed room and a lot of interested parties, and I'd like to thank all of our members. I think 24 members, and we're one who could not be here today and one who is actually, I think, if not in the building, close. So we're going to go ahead and gavel in. I think we've got a couple of members who are visiting. Oh, and look, hello, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is very nice to see you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder how that happened, Mr. Speaker. A lot of good interest in our roads. How about that? Thank you. Good to see you. Be well. All right. And a surprise visit from Speaker Smith to start us off. So thank you, everyone, for being here. The first thanks has got to be to our staff who's organized everything for this meeting, and, of course, our folks in the House who handle our streaming and our security and all of those things that make all these meetings possible. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Huge interest in this particular topic, and that does not come as a surprise to anyone, I don't think, but it's very nice. We appreciate all the communication. We have set up a committee email address for comments. Please see Lauren. Where is Lauren? There she is. Lauren wore a nice red dress today, so you can find her. Lauren, if you need any communication from the committee, she is the person to help you with all of that. Members, she is also your contact for meeting information, your mileage forms, those type of things. Make sure you see Lauren for those things. And Lauren keeps tabs of the time for speakers and things such as that. Lauren, thank you for everything you do. And we're very happy to have Lauren back because Mary Elliott is now in childcare. Lauren had a baby and was off on maternity leave when we left. So we're really glad to have her back. And I think Ellie's around here somewhere too. We're double teaming. Ellie took over for her while she was gone, and we're very thankful that we had all that coverage. For this meeting, ladies and gentlemen, I think last time we introduced ourselves, but as the committee has changed and grown a little bit, and for the folks who might not have been paying attention, I would ask that we introduce ourselves. Please, no commentary. Let's stick with names and districts that you serve. And I will start in the front, over there on the left with Mr. Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, lady. It's good to be here. Philip Bowers, I represent the Clemson Central 6 Mile area, which is District 3 in Pickens County. Nice to be here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, lady. I am Scott Montgomery from Spartanburg, District 32.
Good afternoon. I am Heath Sessions. I represent District 46, which is Rock Hill, York County.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Lawson. I represent District 30, which is Cherokee and Spartanburg counties.
Cody Mitchell, represent District 65, which is parts of Darlington, Chesterfield, Kershaw, and Lancaster County.
Hey guys, I'm David Martin, representing District 26. That's the east side of Fort Mill.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm James Teeple, represent District 116, which is Charleston and Colleton County.
Good afternoon. I'm not on the board, but I'm here as a citizen. My name's Jay Kilmartin, District 85, Irmo, Chapin, Columbia area.
Bill Hager, House Seat 122. I represent Beaufort, Jasper, Colleton, and Hampton County. And actually, I'm going to break a rule. I actually have the largest DOT project ever awarded in my district.
Good afternoon. My name's David Vaughn, District 27, the Malden-Simpsonville area of Greenville County.
Good afternoon, Robbie Robbins, District 97, Colleton, and Dorchester counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Cambrell Garvin, Richland County, serving Northeast Columbia and Blythewood. Great to be here.
Hey, everybody. Stephen Long, District 37, Northern Spartanburg County.
Bill Hickson, House District 83, Aiken and Edgefield County.
Good afternoon, everyone. Leon Stavernak is super congested and in need of help. District 119 in Charleston County, including West Ashley, James Island, and Johns Island.
Heather Ammons Crawford, District 68, Horry County, Southern Myrtle Beach, Greater Socastee, and Burgess areas.
Shannon Erickson, South Carolina, House District 124, helps you remember how many districts there are in the state. Beaufort.
Okay, got it. Lonnie Hosey, District 91, Allendale, Bondwell, and parts of Orangeburg County, 71 miles across the district, is pure rural. So we have a lot of South Carolina roads.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Roger Kirby, House District 101, serving Florence County, Williamsburg County, and Berkeley County. I live in Lake City. Pleasure to be with you today.
Good afternoon. Representative Michael Rivers, representing District 121, parts of St. Helena and Carlton County. Excuse me, I am from St. Helena, but parts of Beaufort and Carlton County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Smith, House District 99, Berkeley County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gary Brewer, House District 114 in Charleston and Dorchester counties.
And Brandon Guffey, House District 48, Rock Hill and Lake Wiley.
All righty, so you can see we've got some good talent, some seasoned veteran legislators and some of our new folks, but we are positioned all across the state. And I am very proud that all of you took time today to show up for the meeting and hear the testimony before us today. Today we have our Secretary of Transportation, Justin Powell, with us. I think most of your commissioners are here as well, and some DOT staff. I want to thank the collective team of DOT. I know that this is not a comfortable thing to go through when you've got everybody telling you how you ought to do your jobs. And we appreciate your willingness to be part of that teamwork and that dialogue and the discussion, and your earnest conversations with the fact that you'd like to see improvements as well. And we appreciate that self-reflection during this process. You know, as South Carolina is the fourth fastest growing state in the nation, we have some of the most dangerous roads, especially our rural roads. We are seeing congestion that we have never seen before. We had a 25-year plan for our roads, and being fourth in growth in the nation kind of took that plan and made it explode, and it doesn't even apply any longer. And so this is a fast-moving piece of finding information, not a long-time study committee, because South Carolina, we're doing business well, and we need to keep our citizens safe and keep commerce moving. We appreciate all of the teamwork as witnessed by the committee and the folks who are in that audience. Thank you so much. Today we will have DOT speak to us and kind of give us a state of DOT as it stands currently with some insights. And we will follow the agenda as closely as we can, ask that everyone be respectful of everyone's time, and most importantly, remember that the citizens need us to be efficient and honest. We've got to move forward in a very open, transparent way to make our roads better, safer, and move things faster, more efficiently, and with greater care for those who are on those roads, not just our citizens who are driving, but also the folks who are working on them. Appreciate everyone who remembers our first responders, especially the ones that we have recently lost. Those jobs are important to our state, and those folks cannot be replaced. And so I think we all have a higher calling at this particular moment with that in mind. I'm happy to co-chair this committee with my friend and colleague for many, many years, Representative Heather Crawford, and she's going to take it over from this point and explain a little bit more of what's going on with the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of you for being here. Let me just say before we get started, I want to thank again everybody that's here today in the audience. Thank you to everybody that's online, especially Chairman Herb Kirschman, who keeps texting to tell me and Shannon and Leon to tell everybody he's watching online. Thank you for watching, Mr. Chairman. But thank you seriously to the speaker for putting this together, and thank you to all of our members for being here today. Your feedback is super important. It's invaluable. And so we are going to hear from Secretary Powell here in just a few minutes. We're going to let him do his presentation, and then we will allow the committee members. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Let's let him get through his presentation, and then we'll take some questions. Then we're going to move into public input. We'll talk more about that at that time, but if there's anybody here that would like to be heard and testify, if you did not sign up, we do have a sign-up sheet. I know we had some folks sign up in advance. We also had some folks sign up just a little while ago. Anybody that wants to sign up, please let us know. Grab a staffer or someone, and we'll get you signed up. And with that, I think we will have Secretary Powell. And welcome. Thank you for being here, and we'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Co-Chair Crawford, Co-Chair Erickson, and the members of this committee. I'm honored to be before you because I think we have an opportunity to talk about, present about DOT, talk about our accomplishments, but also some of the challenges that we do face in moving South Carolina forward, and the opportunity we have to position South Carolina for a better future than we have today. I do want to make a few introductions. As Co-Chair Erickson said, we do have several members of our commission here. Ask them to raise their hands. I recognize them. Our Chairman and 1st District Commissioner T.J. Johnson, our Audit Committee Chairman and 5th District Commissioner Curtis Spencer, 3rd District Commissioner Pam Christopher, 4th District Commissioner Max Metcalf, 7th District Commissioner Sel Hemingway, and at-large appointee of the Governor, Britt Blackwell, here as well. Also have several members of my leadership team here as well, including my Deputy Secretary for Engineering, Rob Perry, Deputy Secretary for Finance and Administration, Carl McCautry, Deputy Secretary for Planning, Leah Quattlebaum, Chief Counsel, Barbara Wessinger, our Internal Audit Director, Mark Labriere, our Chief of Staff, Alan Hutto, and I think you all know Ted Creech, who is a persistent feature at any legislative hearing. So, you're hiding. So I wanted to have an opportunity, first of all, to brief you all about South Carolina DOT, give you some background about our history, where we are, where we've been going. But I think it's important to note is that the last time the General Assembly had a major conversation about DOT was in 2017 when they passed the 2017 Roads Bill. And what's important to note is the 2017 Roads Bill was a fix-it-first bill. It was aimed to overcome 30 years of deferred maintenance on our system since the last major funding increase in the department. And what I would argue is that the department is hitting the marks that we set out to do back in 2017 based on that. I think the reality of what we are facing and why this committee was formed is that the South Carolina of 2025 and the South Carolina that will be going beyond 2025 is very different than South Carolina in 2017. And that's going to require us to take a look at changing business, both at the DOT, within the General Assembly, and within our industry to help deliver that future for South Carolina. As a little bit of background about South Carolina DOT, we were founded in 1917 as the Highway Commission and included what is today the modern DOT, but also what is the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of Public Safety, the Highway Patrol and the Transport Police. During Governor Carroll Campbell's tenure in 1993, we were renamed the Department of Transportation, and the DMV and DPS were moved out as separate state agencies. Our mission is predominantly focused on maintaining our state highway network of 41,000 miles, but we also have responsibilities for providing, managing the state's transit programs, as well as encouraging rail development. While South Carolina is the 10th smallest state geographically, we have the 4th largest state highway system in the country. Only Texas, North Carolina, and Virginia have larger state highway systems than South Carolina. So to put that in comparison a little bit, our neighbors in Georgia have an 18,000-mile system. Our friends in Florida have a 12,000-mile system. So South Carolina has a very large system to maintain relative to other states. Today, we have about 4,000 employees working in all of our 7 districts and offices in every single one of our counties. I want to say is the overwhelming majority of them are focused on working on the field in your districts. Our budget's about $2.7 billion, and we're funded by a mix of about 60% state funds and 40% federal funds. Our current governance structure came into effect in 2016. The governor appoints the SCDOT Commission. There are 9 commissioners by law. 7 of them represent the congressional districts that you all reside in, and 2 of them are at-large appointees of the governor. Every member is confirmed by both the House and the Senate, either by the legislative delegation of each congressional district or by the full House and Senate for the at-large members. Their role is statutorily focused on policy and planning, funding and finance, and oversight of the Secretary of Transportation. The commission appoints me as the Secretary of Transportation, and I'm confirmed by the Senate. The Secretary is responsible for the day-to-day operations and appoints the leadership team for the agency. So we'll go through each one of those boxes underneath. The Deputy Secretary for Engineering oversees the engineering division, which is the overwhelming majority, about 90% of our workforce works in the engineering division. And this includes the field maintenance personnel in your districts, the construction personnel who are managing projects on the ground, as well as the teams here in Columbia that design and move those projects through the project delivery process. Our Deputy Secretary for Finance and Administration manages what I would argue is one of the most complex financial and support functions of any state agency. That includes the $2.7 billion budget, preparing independent financial statements that are independently audited financial statements that are sent over to the Comptroller General for inclusion in the states, the largest IT network in state government, and procuring hundreds of millions of dollars annually on behalf of the DOT. We have a Deputy Secretary for Planning who oversees our planning division. They do all the required state and federal planning documents that we have to prepare. That division also handles our coordination with our metropolitan planning organizations and our councils of government. So for many of you, you're familiar with, in Charleston, it's CHATS, in Rock Hill, it's RFATS, and in your rural areas, Catawba, Lower Savannah, those kind of government, those agencies that do regional planning on our behalf. Our Intermodal and Freight Division handles the state's transit program and rail development, and we also maintain our legal office and chief of staff as well. Other thing that's not on this chart is our Internal Audit Division. One of the changes the General Assembly made in 2016 was to have that position report to the state auditor rather than the Secretary of the Commission. So we have routinely audits us. Chair of the Ways and Means as well as EPW Committee receive those reports every time one is completed. I would say we're the only state agency with a truly independent internal audit function that is reviewing and auditing us regularly. As you undertake this process on the committee, there have been really 3 major laws passed since that 1993 restructuring of state government under the late Governor Carroll Campbell. That 93 reform moved the DMV and Department of Public Safety out of the Department of Transportation, made them agencies that report to the governor. At the time, the DOT remained appointed by the commission, was appointed by the legislature, and in turn, that commission appointed what was known as the executive director. That changed in Act 114 of 2007. That bill had 2 major impacts that we still have with us today. First, it turned the executive director position into the Secretary of Transportation and put that role within the governor's cabinet. The commission remained legislatively appointed at that time. In addition, it required that the DOT rank projects based on legislatively established analytical criteria, traffic counts, the condition of the roads and bridges, the potential for economic development. It took the commission out of doing individual project selection and made project selection analytical rather than a political decision. Second major bill that occurred was in 2016, and that's Act 275. And it created that current structure where the governor appoints the commission, and then the commission in turn appoints the secretary, and the secretary was taken out of the cabinet. Changed the responsibilities of the commission to be very much focused on strategic planning and funding for the agency, and took them out of the procurement process. It also, as I mentioned earlier, put the internal audit function under the state auditor. And then the third major bill, which we call the 2017 Roads Bill, but official title was Act 40, was the 12-cent increase in the motor fuel tax that occurred between 2017 and 2022. All those funds have been set aside in a segregated fund. You can go on our website. We basically have it down to the penny, down to the project of where those funds have been allocated. One of the other things that was important about that bill is it required DOT to adopt a performance-based plan that said, and based on the investments made into the system, what would be the returns back out in terms of the public. But at the time, as I've mentioned earlier, the General Assembly was very much focused on dealing with the repair and recovery of the system from 30 years of deferred maintenance. And congestion was not necessarily an issue that was handled in that bill. So that requirement of the 2017 Roads Bill and that focus on maintenance that the General Assembly kind of put the department on, we built a 10-year plan focused on 4 key areas. First is rural road safety. So South Carolina, as Co-Chair Erickson indicated, has the unfortunate distinction of having the nation's worst rural road fatality rate. And part of that is a law enforcement issue. They're the ones that can handle DUI and speeding, but there are ways that the DOT can engineer safety into the road. When we did our analysis, one of the things we determined was that most of our crashes in rural areas were occurring because of road departures, people getting out of their lanes. So that's why you see on our rural road safety projects, rumble strips, better markings, better signing to keep people in their lanes, and then wider shoulders and clear zones put in so that if you get out of the lane, you have an opportunity to recover before you hit an object. We set out on our goal, and then we initiated the 10-year plan that we would get 1,000 miles underway in the 10-year plan. We've already gotten nearly 1,200 miles under construction and increased our goal to 1,300 miles. But what's more important is that these projects are saving lives. On the corridors that have had a project and completed, we've gone back and measured, and we've seen a 20% reduction in fatal and serious injury crashes in those corridors because of those projects that we've done as a result of the 10-year plan. As I mentioned earlier, the state has the 4th largest state highway system, and the overwhelming majority of the dollars from the 2017 Roads Bill have gone into paving projects. We have been able to get nearly 1/4 of the state highway system under contract or for repaving in the past 8 years. And back in May, our commission approved another 700 miles to get on that list to continue that initiative. So we know we still have a long ways to go in terms of paving, but our road conditions are improving across the state. Bridges have gotten a lot of attention lately. When the 10-year plan started, we had set out as a goal of 465 bridges being done in that 10-year period. To date, we've already gotten 416 bridges complete or under construction. And thanks to the additional funding from General Assembly that we've received the past 2 years, as well as some additional federal funding, we've been able to increase our target to 530 bridges completed within that 10-year plan. But I think what's important to note is that we have a real bridge challenge in South Carolina. 2,400 of our 8,400 bridges are 60 years or older. So they're hitting that age where we need to do a major rehabilitation or replacement. Right now, we've got 80 bridges or so closed across the state, with another 700 with a load posting that trucks of a certain size and weight can't pass over them legally. So we're going to have continued investment in order for us to be ready to address this long-term challenge. And then last on our goal is our interstates. Our interstate program are the arteries of commerce for South Carolina. While they're only about 800 miles of the state's 41,000 miles of roads, they carry nearly a third of the state's traffic on them. And we've got expansion projects that I'll talk a little bit later, basically in almost every single corner of the state right now, trying to add capacity to our interstates to deal with the growth we've seen in population, industry, and from our port. I think what it's fair to say, though, is the General Assembly trusted us back in 2017 to make a meaningful impact to try to start addressing this 30-year backlog of deferred maintenance. I would say is from the results, we have been delivering what we were asked to deliver back in 2017. DOT's recurring budget is about $2.76 billion per year, and that's absent any one-time funding that we get from the General Assembly, like the $200 million last year in bridge money, or any federal grants like we had received last year for Long Point Road interchange and for the replacing the Lake Marion Bridge on I-95. We're funded about 60% from the state, And so we get the single biggest source of that is the gas tax paying into our system. We also receive the $500 you pay when you buy a car, that car sales tax that you pay on it, as well as a portion of the DMV's fees and fines. We also get $120 million from the general fund to match federal funds. About 40% of our funding comes from the federal government, the U.S. Department of Transportation. When we take federal funds, it means it comes with additional requirements and strings that come along with it. So certain contracting goals, certain environmental requirements that we have to play by their rule book. But when we put those dollars to work, we focus on the priorities of the state. And so about half of our budget goes into maintaining our existing system. So that's replacing bridges, repaving roads, and paying for our field maintenance personnel who do the work day in, day out of fixing potholes, clearing ditches from there. About a third of our dollars go into what we call capacity and operational improvements, so improvements that can improve the operation of the system. The majority of those dollars are going into our interstates, into safety projects, and into our regional mobility program, where we allow the regional councils of government and the metropolitan planning organizations identify and select projects that are regionally significant for them. Our remaining operations are just 13% of our budget, so we put the overwhelming amount of dollars that we receive back onto the road at the end of the day. But I'll point out one thing that's missing from this chart. You'll notice we don't have a line item for debt service. The department made a conscious decision in 2023 to accelerate and pay off all of its outstanding debt. So all of the dollars coming into the department now are paying for projects and operations today rather than projects that may have happened 10 or 15 years ago. In terms of the construction program that we have going on across the state, we have significantly grown the amount of construction we have thanks to the 2017 roads bill, thanks to the 2021 federal infrastructure law, and then thanks to the one-time appropriations we get from the General Assembly over the past several years. We have been able in the past 8 years to go more than 2.5 times the amount of contracts across the state that we've had. It's gone from over $2 billion to nearly $7 billion in projects right now under contract across South Carolina. So I want to provide some insight on some major projects that we have going on. First one is widening I-26 between Columbia and Charleston. That corridor routinely breaks down with port traffic, with tourist traffic, with folks just trying to get between Columbia and Charleston. Right now we have 3 contracts underway, one on the Columbia side in Calhoun County, one on the Somerville side, Charleston side down in Berkeley County, and then one in the I-26, I-95 interchange going on there. And our goal is to continue to let contracts until we meet in the middle and we have 6 lanes between Columbia and Charleston. The other major project we have going on, we have just wrapped up first 2 phases of untangling Malfunction Junction and hopefully turning it into Carolina Crossroads. The next phases you will see on that project will be widening I-20 between Bush River Road and 378. And we're going to be doing a series of utility relocations. I think many of y'all see that pass through that interchange have seen we have been clearing a ton of trees and getting ready for that, but to move those, a thicket of utilities that are going through that interchange so we can be ready for the widening of I-26 between 101 and 106, as well as redoing the I-20-26 interchange and the 126-26 interchange. And then as Representative Hager announced earlier, Speaker Smith, Chair Lady Erickson, Representative Hager were all down in Hardeeville, where we broke ground on the first phase of the I-95 project. That is a $729 million contract, which is the single largest contract ever issued by the Department of Transportation. That'll widen I-95 up from the Georgia border to Exit 8. We'll include a new Exit 8 as well as new bridges across the Savannah River that we're doing in partnership with Georgia. Once you build it, though, you've got to maintain it. And we have a very large system to maintain and only 2,700 personnel to do it. To put that in context, they have to maintain 41,000 miles of road and 8,400 bridges. That maintenance responsibility includes 677,000 bridges. We just had to add 500 more because of the hands-free bill that we had to put up as because of that. We cleared nearly 3,800 miles of ditches a year. We fill 750,000 potholes. and we mow over 500,000 acres of grass annually in our maintenance program. So a tremendous amount, because of a large system, a tremendous amount that we have to maintain. Getting a project from onto a priority list and through the project delivery process requires a lot of hands and a lot of interaction to get there. At the top is always the U.S. Department of Transportation and the two modal administrations we deal with the most, the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. With 40% of the money, they get a say on how we deliver many of our projects and how we regulate the interstate system. So they have a lot of approvals for when we want to make a change to the interstate system. Because of that recent change in administrations, we've actually been working very cooperatively with the Federal Highway Administration on trying to assume more responsibility from the federal government. And I just signed an amended agreement with them where we're taking over 7 responsibilities for that the feds have previously managed that we'll manage here in Columbia, and I'm aiming to take over 3 more so that we can have more local control over how we do things. At the state level, the DOT is required, as I mentioned earlier, to rank and prioritize projects in accordance with Act 114. But we also have a state infrastructure bank that is a separate state agency from the DOT. They are also required to rank and prioritize projects in the same law, but they operate on their own process. Underneath the DOT, we have 46 county transportation committees that receive 3.99 cents of the gas tax. That's distributed by county, by land area, population, and the length of the rural road mileage in each county. Each one of them operates very differently. So what may work in one county does not work in another county. They're required to spend about a third of their money on state highways. There's no requirement to go, they can go above that amount if they so choose. But their main requirements is that the committee must spend it only on public roads. But beyond that, each committee has its discretion of how they want to fund projects. In addition, we rely upon 11 metropolitan planning organizations and 10 council of governments that we split up $238 million for them to pick projects that are regionally significant to those areas. So many of you are in the Aiken area, it's Arts. If you're in the Charleston area, it's Chats. Those committees select a lot of those capacity and operational improvements that we have across the state. Finally, we have 271 local municipalities and 46 counties in the state. The municipalities in the state actually do have an ability to deny a project being done by DOT within their boundaries. 6 of our counties have implemented transportation sales tax, and we rely upon 29 transit providers. But I think what the takeaway on this is, top to bottom, it requires a tremendous amount of coordination and interplay between all layers of government to get a project across the line. One of the tasks of this committee is to look at how DOT can get faster at delivering projects, how we can improve and optimize our operations. What I wanted to share with the committee is that that's something we're already doing as part of that self-reflection within the DOT. How do we get better with the resources we have? So I want to share a couple things that we are already working on. First, we're in the middle of a series of several IT system upgrades to improve our operations. One, we are focused right now on improving our maintenance work order system, so personnel can be off of paper and be able to handle things on an iPad in the vehicle, hopefully saving time, allow our folks to spend more time in the field than back in the office keying in things. Second, we're in the middle of upgrading our encroachment permit system. And I get a lot of feedback about encroachment permits from all of y'all. And what I would say is, it's common feedback that we need to improve that process. So one of the things I have done have asked that team to do a 6 Sigma review, similar to what our friends at DES are doing of improving our permits there, see how we can streamline that process before we implement that new system. Bridges are a major challenge for us. We've talked about that before. We have restructured our bridge management program. It is now a direct report to the Deputy Secretary for Engineering. We've recently established bridge maintenance units in all 7 of our districts, emulating something that we had down in the Charleston area, so that we can be more focused on dealing with maintenance issues before they become problems. We're also working to fast-track bridge projects, and our commission at their last meeting kind of prioritizing the $200 million that y'all granted us in the budget process, proved a change with our federal partners that we can get closed bridge on the list 3 months faster so we can access federal money faster. So we've been working on that. And then the last thing is we went through a process we called the target operating model, but we wanted to go through our manpower needs across the agency. So we were, and I think it was when Co-Chair Erickson was our budget subcommittee chair at the time, we went through a process that we actively reviewed every single position in the organization. We actually reduced our position count from about 5,300 positions to 4,600 positions. I think we're the only state agency to come in that. What we were able to do with that, though, was we were able to significantly increase by budgeting, instead of taking money budgeting for positions we could not fill, we took those dollars to put back into our workforce. So our entry pay has gone from $11 an hour to $20 an hour over the past 5 years. And these are all efforts we need to do because there are two really big challenges confronting the DOT in the future right now: inflation and growth. So inflation has taken a big bite out of our buying power since the 2017 roads bills passed. While the total gas tax collections coming to DOT have increased since 2017, that's really only because of the increase in the gas tax rate that occurred between 2017 and 2022. And all those dollars have been segregated, set aside in the Infrastructure Maintenance Trust Fund by law, and we've preserved and protected them really just for paving and safety projects. So if you look at our reports, that's where the money is going by and large. When you add the inflation that our highway construction industry has seen over the past few years, you can see our buying power has dramatically eroded. And so what that means is, because by living within our budget means we're pushing out fewer projects. Kind of put it into context, back in 2017 and 18, when the first year of the 2017 roads bill was put into effect, we could push out 114 miles of two-lane paving with 1 penny of the gas tax, which is about $36 million. Last fiscal year, that same penny could only buy 87 miles of two-lane paving across the state. So what that means is we're not able to put as much out as we had a few years ago. A big part of that is the inflation that we've all seen in our household budgets, our business budgets. But part of it is that the gas tax isn't keeping up with population growth and inflation. Part of that is when you buy a new car today, you're getting 1 to 2 miles more per gallon than you did with your prior car. But we've also seen, at least in a small part in the state, we're seeing people buy electric vehicles, and when you fuel on electrons rather than gallons of gasoline, you don't pay the gas tax. So as I've kind of hit on throughout here, that 2017 roads bill was really focused on a comprehensive strategy to start recovering our system from 30 years of deferred maintenance and start bringing our system back towards a state of good repair. And I would say DOT has been hitting all the metrics that we said we would hit out back in 2017. But at its core, the 2017 roads bill was a repair bill. But I think in 8 years, South Carolina has changed dramatically. I think people have all discovered what we all know, that South Carolina is a wonderful place to raise a family. It's a wonderful place to retire. It's a wonderful place to open a business. With the growth, there comes a lot of benefits and a lot of change for the state, but it also means there's a lot of challenges that come with it. You know, the reality we all know is that growth isn't coming. It's here, and it's likely to continue to be here for the foreseeable future. By owning half of the public roads in South Carolina, DOT ultimately gets the biggest complaint out of that growth: traffic. Yet in the big picture, we don't make the land use decisions that leads to that growth. We do have a role in the encroachment permit process, but our focus is on the safe operation of traffic when we're adding an access to the state highway system. Local governments, by the decision of the General Assembly, make decisions about land use, and I think that's the proper decision because local communities need to decide how they will grow and look. But that traffic from those local land use decisions is ultimately borne by the DOT. South Carolina's population growth rate is accelerating. In the 2010 census, we were the 10th fastest growing state in the country, and we added 600,000 new residents. That growth was so significant that we added a 7th congressional district. In 2020, we were again the 10th fastest growing state in the country, and we added 500,000 new residents. but COVID has changed our growth rates. In just 4 years, Census Bureau has estimated we have already added 360,000 new residents in just 4 years' time. Last year, we were the 4th growing state in the country, and U-Haul is reporting us to be the fastest growing state in terms of inbound moves, more than, in raw numbers, than Florida, more than Texas, than any other state in the country. The Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, Frank Rumwater's shop, expects this trend to continue, and that by 2040, we will have 6.2 million residents in the state of South Carolina. And that strain that comes from that growth will continue to be felt in the counties expected to grow the most, along the coast, along the I-85 corridor, and in the Charlotte metropolitan area. We also see it already in our traffic count. So when we look at the amount of vehicle miles traveled, what we're seeing is an increase in traffic on roughly the same number of lane miles that we've already had before, particularly in those counties growing the most. Over the past year, we've been working on our next long-range plan that's required by the General Assembly called Momentum 2050. And the growth that South Carolina is seeing has been front and center to those planning discussions. This spring, back in May, the Commission adopted the Momentum 2050 plan. And it's a vision. I want to emphasize the key word. It's a vision of where we need to focus South Carolina's transportation investments for the next 25 years. This will be the foundation for the next 10-year plan when the current one ends in 2027, and identifies the gaps that we have for us to achieve that future if we want to pursue it. There's 4 key principles in that plan. First, we must not let go of the gains we've made in starting to recover our transportation system. We need to continue to invest in our payments. We need to significantly increase our investment in our bridges. And we've got to continue to make strides in making our roadways safer by investments in safety. Second, we've got to continue to be ready to deal with the influx of freight coming into South Carolina that comes from our population growth, the expansion plans of the Port of Charleston, and all of the new manufacturing plants that are opening up across South Carolina. We're making progress on widening 26 and 95, but there are hundreds of miles of rural corridors across the state that we need to address. It also means we need to invest in our urban areas as well. That means finishing the work of turning Malfunction Junction into Carolina Crossroads, and then we'll be turning our attention to I-526 in the Charleston area. Rebuilding I-526, which is different than the Charleston County-sponsored extension project, will be a long, costly, and a complex project for us to do, and will be, at the current cost estimate, the largest project ever undertaken by the Department of Transportation at a total cost of $7 billion. $7 billion is right now the entire construction program for the rest of the state of South Carolina. So we've got to continue to be prepared for that, but we also can't forget that the rest of the urban areas of the state are going to be dealing with growth and congestion at the same time. We also need to recognize our interstates are not going to be our sole corridors for moving freight. We've got to look at our rural corridors, those connections on those, so that we can make sure that rural communities have the same access to safe and access to continue for their future. Third, we've got to balance this dual challenge of growth that we have in South Carolina. We've got urban areas growing exponentially. We have rural areas that are shrinking, and transportation is increasingly the lifeline for getting them to work, to get to school, to get to healthcare. So we've got to be prepared to continue balancing that challenge, but we've got to look at more than just widenings and new alignments. We've got to think about signal retimings and intersection improvements, things that we can do to move more volume through the same footprint. And we've got to think about things we haven't traditionally thought about, like transit, to move workforce to the jobs of the future that are coming to South Carolina. And then fourth, SCDOT, while we are the Department of Transportation, there are a lot of hands that help move South Carolina, be it the Port Authority, be it the Palmetto Railways, be it the Department of Motor Vehicles and Department of Public Safety. We've got to look beyond our silos to move South Carolina forward. And that means doing like the project we're doing with the Port Authority right now, where we're building direct access ramps into the Wando Welch terminals so that port traffic and local traffic can be separated. And we've got to better align our capital plan with them so we make sure that our projects are lined up for when they have their needs happening. It's a big vision, and it aims to start addressing the challenge of congestion and growth that South Carolina has been seeing and will continue to see. But I'll also fully admit that it's a plan I cannot fully implement within our current existing constraints. The momentum plan included a gap analysis of what would be needed to address the challenges of growth across the state. In total, nearly $1 billion annually would be needed for us to fully implement the momentum plan by increasing investments in interstates, bridges, and congestion projects. But funding isn't the only issue. We need to have a discussion about how we plan, what tools are in our toolbox, and how we pay for transportation. That's why I personally think that this committee is so important, and why the speaker formed it is because I think there's some really opportunities for helping move this state into a new future. Transportation in South Carolina largely lives in the structure that was created in the 1993 government reform by Governor Carroll Campbell. And while we've made intervening changes in 2007, 16, and 17, by and large, we are operating a framework of the 1990s South Carolina rather than the challenges of 2020s or 2030s or 2040s South Carolina. Transportation planning in South Carolina, as you saw in that chart earlier today, is fragmented. While we have authority over roads and bridges, we have a very large network compared to other states, probably more than we can say grace over. But the Ports Authority, Palmetto Railways, DMV, DPS, Aeronautics, the SIB, even the Office of Regulatory Staff are all state agencies that play a role in moving South Carolina forward. Local governments, every day through their sales taxes and their land use decisions, affect how the state's transportation system operates every day. Efforts right now to plan our better investments to better together based on personal relationships or whatever the issues in front of us at a given time. Unlike economic development or workforce development, there is no formal mechanism in South Carolina for transportation agencies to coordinate their investments and their plans together. And so one of the things I would ask this committee to consider is the creation of a coordinating council for mobility and transportation where we can establish a statewide vision on how South Carolina should move and ultimately set a framework for interaction with our regional and local government partners. The toolbox that SCDOT uses to deliver projects was largely created in the 1950s and 1990s. Projects today are getting increasingly complex, and with complexity comes risk to both the state and the contractor doing the job. I think all of us know that there's a constant pressure to deliver more projects faster than we are today. There are opportunities for us to modernize that toolbox to better deliver projects. First, there's a real opportunity right now for SCDOT to assume what's known as the National Environmental Policy Act coordination, or NEPA coordination, from the Federal Highway Administration. This is a priority of U.S. DOT Secretary Sean Duffy and this administration as they seek to deliver bigger projects faster. It would allow SCDOT to directly coordinate with the permitting agencies to set our priorities to get projects through the pipeline faster. In conversations like other states like Texas and Florida, who have gone over to assume this responsibility, they report they have saved months and years in delivering projects. And when you're talking about today's inflationary environment, that is real money. This would require a statutory change for us to pursue this, which is why we haven't done it yet. Second, we need to consider other procurement methods to deliver these large and complex projects like phase design build and CMGC, which allow projects to be cooperatively developed between the state and the industry so we can be better able to understand the cost and risk when we do a project. Many of the other states in our region, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, all have those authorities, but we don't have that authority in South Carolina. In addition, the House took a leadership role last session of passing a modernization of our procurement authorities, and hopefully we can get that through the Senate this year. But ultimately, you can supercharge the engine as much as you can, but ultimately you've got to put fuel in the tank. Paying for all of this will require new funds. Our revenue streams have not kept up with population and inflation. The 2017 roads bill was a repair bill focused mostly on providing funds for pavement and safety. It was not meant to be a congestion bill. Recent federal laws have allowed us to increase funding for bridges and for interstates and congestion, and we've gotten several one-time grants to help us along. That federal transportation authorization expires next year. And while I've been working personally to put South Carolina front and center with the Trump administration, I don't think Washington's place we can always look to as we had in the past to provide funds for our projects into the future. So paying for our system outside of federal funds comes from people driving internal combustion or gasoline vehicles. EV drivers right now pay $120 every 2 years or $60 a year into paying for the maintenance and improvement of the state highway system. An internal combustion driver or gasoline driver pays about $200 per year. And so considering the growth in electric vehicles from the plants that are opening up across South Carolina, it may be time for us to consider looking at equalizing for fairness who's paying to maintain our system. Many challenges of congestion are coming from people, not from the folks like us that have lived in South Carolina almost all or all of our lives. It's people who have been moving into South Carolina over the past few years. So I think there are opportunity for us to consider what mechanisms are out there for us to have growth pay for growth. That could be looking at the safety maintenance fee, which is the first time registration fee somebody pays when they move, that $250 when they move into South Carolina. Congestion mitigation fees on development that is causing this new congestion, or considering choice lanes like those done in Florida and North Carolina and Georgia, where you can help alleviate traffic in our most congested areas. These are big items. I'm glad that we have a big committee to look at these items. I look forward to that continued dialogue with you as we get ready to address the challenges of 2025 and beyond in South Carolina. Madam Co-Chairs, I thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Secretary Powell. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for your intent listening. That was a lot of information. I'll remind you that we need to stick to the presentation that we just heard from and not specific projects. If you have specific projects, I think there's probably plenty of DOT staff to help you with that. But any questions that you may have from this point forward, as I pass the chair over to Representative Crawford to manage from this point forward, please make sure that they are about the presentation that you've heard, and let's try to give Secretary Powell some feedback and questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Powell, I want to say thank you. I know, and I realize you don't always hear the praise, but often many are always quick to give the negative feedback or the criticism. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the presentation and the self-reflection. Also want to say thank you to your team, your staff that are here, Alan and Ted, always very accessible and helpful to us as legislators. And I know they get many calls from me every week, and I always have to remind myself there are like 169 other people that they're having to deal with too. And South Carolina has a lot to be proud of, but it's political season, and I hear a lot of candidates talking about South Carolina in negative ways and how we're bad at this or do this wrong. There are things that we do right too. This big, beautiful committee that we have now is great. We're going to really work and just zone in on how we can help y'all, how we can help the citizens, how we can put our money to good use, how we can make things better. All agencies and entities have issues, and we do a lot of things right. So sleepy South Carolina is not sleepy anymore. We know that. I happen to represent an area that has boomed in population over the last decade or so. And there are a lot of things that we do right and a lot of things clearly because we have people moving here in flocks. They have discovered paradise. Obviously, we're doing something right because we are attracting a whole lot of people to this state. And as you mentioned with our growth, no agency is perfect, but we know we've got some work to do, and that's what we're here for today. We're here to go from good to great. And so we're here to talk about improvements. As Chair Lady Erickson said, we want to keep the Q&A from our members to the process. Let's talk about procedures and processes, ideas on how to make things better, streamlining things. If you have a particular project that you want to discuss, certainly they have staff on hand that we can work on that. With that, we will take questions from our members. Do we have any members in the queue? Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary. I wanted to ask this is more of a structural question, I guess. The CTC program, as it's currently operating in the state, it seems to be a real kind of hodgepodge, depending on what county you're in, the way it's handled either through county councils or through some other structure. With basically almost 4 cents of the gas tax going to the CTCs, a large percentage of that 41,000 miles of roads are rural roads. And it seems that, I know probably in every county, but certainly in our poorer counties, there's no catching up. There's no sense that there's any catching up. And I guess my ask is that in determining how we organize ourselves moving forward, that issue have some additional attention as well. I understand the congestion issues, and certainly that's of primary importance. But the whole rural road programs, and you and I have talked about this, we really, I believe, need to pay. I think it would do our state a disservice not to pay some significant attention to the way we're funding the maintenance and safety and all that type thing on our rural roads. It's obvious that the 4 cent is not going to get us there. So it's more of a comment, I guess, than a question, but I think it's important that we broach that topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kirby. Representative Smith?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you, echo all the sentiments to you and your team. Thank you for all that you do. You do take all the punches, that's for sure, and know that you are appreciated. Certainly, I don't need to spend any seconds talking about the congestion and how when you move around the low country in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester counties, you always look at your watch and plan accordingly when you're moving from place to place. Those traffic woes that our constituents, all of our constituents are sitting in are real, and we know that we're working hard to deal with that. I only bring this up, Madam Chair, you brought it up, the exit ramp around the port to alleviate the truck traffic away from vehicular on 526 around our port. We know that improvement estimates on 526 is estimated to be above $7 billion. You just reminded us that your annual budget is just over $2 billion. It's sobering what these projects are cost and what they're projected to cost on those. Love to hear some comments about just in terms of who's bidding for these projects and how that bidding process is looking like, and if that's going to be any relief on that anytime soon, or should we just expect for that to continue on or get worse? And then the second thing I want to talk about, thank you for not only identifying the problems, but coming forth with solutions. I myself have never heard an EV vehicle owner not willing to pay their fair share. And I think it's important when we're having those discussions, in my opinion, that we talk about paying your fair share and even the word equality that can evoke some discomfort at times. What this is not is a penalty tax. We are not penalizing folks for doing what they feel is the right thing to own for whatever reason, electric vehicles. So if we could just make sure that we're, in all of our conversations, it's not a penalty tax. We're just looking to make sure that they're paying their fair share, because none of them that I've ever talked to have had any problems with making sure that they're paying equal to what the gas vehicles are paying. But just to the bidding out and the pricing, if you may.
Sure. So the pricing issue really kind of started after, kind of as pandemic restrictions were being lifted. You saw price increases just like we saw on price of eggs, price of your household goods and items. So I would say that's not a South Carolina issue. That was a national issue. And so everybody went through their supply chain issues. I'm pretty close to the Secretary in Florida. They had issues with getting aggregate, the road base. We didn't have aggregate issues. We were having issues with cement at one point in time. So you had those kind of issues and challenges that you went through in that process. What I would say from a competition perspective, we work hard on making sure we have what I call a measured program, that we put out kind of consistent amounts of work, because what we want to be is attractive to the industry, both our in-state firms, but an out-of-state firm that might be looking to enter, that there's an opportunity to continue to get more work. If you bid on a project in South Carolina, in the future, there'll be another job. So if you make that investment in equipment and plant and hiring a workforce, there's an opportunity to continue. In terms of the competition, what we've seen, bridge projects right now, I would say we're getting 4 to 6 bids per bridge project right now across the state. In terms of competition, we're in an active procurement for the Long Point Road interchange right now. I've been very pleased. So we've started that off. I think it was 6 firms have shown interest in that. So I believe we're getting good competition. And I would say the 95 project, that's a new entry into South Carolina. A firm that's done work in North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia, now entering South Carolina. In terms of the EVs, again, I think the conversation is, I use the word fairness myself instead of equality. But I think the real issue is an electric vehicle is heavier. So, the equivalent vehicle is heavier than what you have. So there is more wear and tear. Now, we build our roads for the 80,000-pound truck going over it, not necessarily the 8,000-pound Tesla. What I would say is the other issue about it is that electric vehicles have different centers of gravity. So when you're driving a internal combustion car, the weight is in the engine. On a electric vehicle, the weight's in the battery underneath. So it's like a roller skate is the best way I can describe it. So at some point, we're probably going to have to look at guardrails, because that's where the weight may not be going. So we have some challenges. Again, the gas tax was a perfect user fee for internal combustion vehicle, because how much you drove and how heavy you were was kind of how much you paid in gas. It's really hard to tax that electricity, and so I think it's that registration fee, and a lot of other states in our region have gone and set their registration fees at a $200 level, which is very equal to what a gasoline vehicle pays.
Representative Hosey.
Thank you, Chair. And to Secretary Powell, thank you for coming to Barnwell some time ago. And you sat there and talked with me and with your delegation about the future of the roads. One particular question, the bridge between Orangeburg and Santee, that bridge, is that a priority to be reconstructed in South Carolina?
Talking about the 95 bridge across?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we received a $175 million federal grant last year. We are going to be opening price proposals in October. So I'm planning on having a groundbreaking on that one by the end of the year.
Okay. In road construction, I know it's a big job. Is there any supervision after the roads have been put in place? We got a lot of roads that's still like milky, bumpy. They're repaved, but you have a milkshake going through there in some areas in my area, especially Highway 278 between Barnwell and Allendale. Some of the concerns, I won't say complaints, from the citizens is who actually check and supervise those buildings. Could you tell us something about why?
Okay, so certainly what we do is throughout the construction process, we have a construction inspector, basically on-site overseeing that work. Part of that is making sure that the right materials have been put in. So actually down on Shop Road, right across the street from Williams-Brice Stadium, we maintain a lab, so they basically test samples of every concrete, steel, asphalt that go in there. That contract, the construction inspector that sometimes is a DOT employee, sometimes we outsource it to a consultant, but they are to do tests, and one of them is rideability. So what we can do is we'll take a look at those particular segments and see if we're still in punch list on them with the contractor.
Last question. We used to have, I'm old enough to tell you that, an inspection of a vehicle's tax. Is that now in registration fee, included in the registration fee that we used to do $3, whatever that was, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s? I'm just thinking about how do we get more money to do what we are doing here in South Carolina. Do you think that it's necessary to bring back, if it's not included, the inspection fee? It does help the vehicles to be very safe on the road.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I remember, the inspection process ended, I want to say in the 1980s. I think I was a kid. I experienced it when I briefly lived in Virginia. I think there's got to be a consideration of options and what we've got to look at. Whether or not we bring that back is probably a discussion for the General Assembly, but I think we've got a need across the state right now.
Thank you. I also want to recognize that Representative Neese has joined us, so thank you for being here. He's in the back corner hiding. Thank you for being here. Up next, we have Representative Brewer.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary Powell. Appreciate you coming today. Appreciate your staff being here. Y'all are always a pleasure to work with, and y'all have, like I've told you time and time again, the toughest job in the state. On your best day, 50% of the people are going to be mad at what you're doing. And I know that's a difficult job, but you're doing a great job of trying to move us forward and trying to get us into the next era of SCDOT, and I'm thankful that you're in that position to do so. One of the things that you had mentioned, you brought up procurement, and I want to talk about procurement, permitting, and flexibility. When you talk about procurement, could you expand upon the procurement types that you'll need and what it will allow you to do to have those tools in your toolbox, and then we'll go to the other two?
Sure. So I think it's important to note how we procure most of our road construction now is we'll call it is design, bid, build. So that's 90% of what we put out, which is either in-house, they design plans, or we have a consultant come in, design plans. We then go out to a letting where a contractor comes in and says, with these quantities, how much will you do the job? And basically, the lowest responsive bidder wins the work. So that's almost all of our projects. What we also do is what's known as design build. And so what that is how we built the Ravenel Bridge is probably the most visible design build project we've done. But that is a combination of where you're hiring a team both on their experience, and you give them up to about 30% of the plans, and you say, all right, tell me how to build this and build it better than what it is and what's your price. So it's a combination of both the technical approach in the team, but also the price that they propose, and so you get a best value on that. The two methods that we don't have right now in code, first one is known as CMGC, Construction Manager, General Contractor. That one, you select the contractor before the plans are done, and they work together with your designer to come up with that, and they come up with a best price at that point, and you can take or leave it from there, and you have a third party to review it. The other one is known as phased design build. It's also called progressive design build in other states, but it's the idea that you select the firm and then you cooperatively go through together. You can look through the risks. So, a lot of our biggest challenges that we have on our projects are going to be related to utilities. They're going to be related to right-of-way, hazardous materials. And so you can work together on identifying those risks, how you can kind of work through it. I think it's best suited for those very large and complex projects where it's hard to know exactly what you're going to get into at the beginning. So it's something that we wouldn't do every day, but there are going to be times where I believe we need to have it in the toolbox.
You know, it's funny, in talking with a lot of the members, I don't think they were actually understood that contractors and engineers don't actually talk until the procurement process is almost complete. And that leads to a lot of change orders. That leads from time and money and other things that are there. So these are tools that allow you to know a price more certainly as you get to bid day, and it should limit your change orders going beyond that, because you've worked it out and discussed it as you're going along. And it's important to have that contractor who builds roads with the engineer that draws the roads, because they sometimes can differ on some things, and it allows them to be able to work through that during the process. And we know the cost up front. We don't have to get hit it on the end. So I appreciate you looking at those. Those are two very good procurement methods. I would also include P3 as something that we need to continue to look at in South Carolina. Not only is it a great procurement method, but it also can help bring money to the system. And as you said, we got to have gas for this engine to run. So I appreciate you looking at those as well. Permitting. You had mentioned the coordinating council. You know, one of the biggest issues that I think that I've faced in my area was the Berlin G. Myers Parkway. And I think you and I've talked about this over the years. It took us 14 years to get an Army Corps and engineer permit. 14 years. Estimated construction costs went from $50 million to where it was awarded around $105, $106 million. The project never changed. We were waiting on a permit that long. Now, that was a federal permit, but we have to be able to make sure that we coordinate our permits and have all our boxes, I's dotted, T's crossed at the local level, so that way we continue to make sure we put the pressure on the federal government to give us the permits that our people overwhelmingly want. This was a project that was the #1 voted on project in the Dorchester County sales tax referendum. So we just delayed, we cost our taxpayers $55 million waiting on one permit. So I'd ask you to expand a little bit on the coordinating council and how you would think that would work with our federal partners as well to be able to get us our permits quicker.
I think, in my thoughts right now, kind of give y'all kind of context of what we're doing. So we already have quarterly meetings with the permitting agencies. So the Army Corps Commander, which is a military officer, they come in every 2 years. It's usually, there's a civilian that usually stays there. We have a good relationship with the Charleston District. We come in, they have them, Department of Environmental Services, as well as Federal Highways, and we go through what's priorities, what we have going from there. So, I mean, we do have that dialogue going forward. But I think the opportunity with NEPA assignment that I talked about earlier is that it puts DOT in the driver's seat as opposed to the Federal Highway Administration. And then what that means is that we can say, this one is more important than that one, and we need to focus our time, effort, and energy, because at the end of the day, our staff is already doing the overwhelming majority of the work to get a permit decision made. And so I think that helps us. And I would say sometimes federal agencies can be very well-meaning, but sometimes they can spend times trying to perfect something that may not necessarily need to be 110% done right. And so you end up maybe taking on 3-4 more months that, if you're talking about a project of $500 million in current inflation environment, that could be millions of dollars that you're waiting on that. So I think there is definitely an opportunity from there. I mean, I would say our bigger challenges tend to be with the federal agencies than our own state agencies, but we have a good relationship with the Army Corps, which tends to be the biggest one on that issue.
That NEPA assignment is crucial. That's something that will, like you said, it puts the ball back in our court. It allows us to be in control of our own destiny, and I'm glad that you're pushing towards that. That's something that I hope this body will help you take up and help you get the assignment. The last thing I was going to talk about was flexibility. Could you explain a little bit from your structure internally about the flexibility that your districts have, what they have in being able to make calls, how their ability to move projects forward on their own, and not everything has to run through Columbia, that you have the expertise within your staff to help make decisions and move things along?
I'm personally a big proponent of where the local level, if it can be solved on the local level, I'll take the phone call about the pothole in your district, but I know at the end of the day, it's going to go down to the local guy on the field to take care of it. So I encourage them to look at it. At the end of the day, we work within the structures when it comes to making a decision on a pavement or a bridge. Obviously, they have their discretion in terms of what they need to do from kind of maintenance forces, prioritize and work from there. But Act 114 kind of puts us into a list, and so we have to say, all right, this one's #1. I got to wait. I understand, member of the House or member of the Senate, Mrs. Jones is calling you about this, but it's number 82 on the list right now. So I would say it protects us and makes sure that funds go to the highest priority, but there's always times and issues where, and that's where I think the CTC committees are oftentimes a valuable resource because they may be able to pick up an issue that that just doesn't work out in the formulas that we have.
Thank you so much for that. And again, Madam Chair, thank you so much. And it wasn't lost on me that you recognized Mike Neese right before you said my name. I know he's my twin, but I remember that.
Oh. Thank you. Up next, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary Powell, for being here. Wanted to look kind of big picture as far as like a structure, specifically as it relates to, we've got the metropolitan planning organizations, we've got the Council of Governments, and they've got all these county transportation committees. How are we not having duplication of efforts with these different organizations? Because while they might have slightly different objectives, it seems like they all have similar purposes. So how do we not have duplication of efforts when we've got three separate locally oriented organizations there?
Well, so I would say from a practical and day-to-day operational perspective, the most CTCs, while they do get into, putting in a turn lane, at the end of the day, they're usually focused on paving projects is historically where they focus most of their effort and energy. And so our personnel are usually at those CTC committee meetings. And so we'll say, well, this one's going to be on the priority list probably in 2 years. You can wait for the DOT, but you want to tackle this one. I'd say the work with the MPOs and the Council of Governments is an area we're in a work in progress on right now. So MPOs are federally required. They are required, and there's actually specific money that has to go to them. In South Carolina, we actually put in more money and match it than we do in other places, and then we treat the Council of Governments, and that's kind of a South Carolina thing to do to set those projects. But one of the things we've been working on, and we'll be talking about tomorrow at our commission meeting, is kind of tightening those policies that we have. What kind of projects do we want them focusing on? I don't want an MPO or COG putting money into a paving project. I want them to be focused on doing an intersection improvement or retiming signals or building a new roadway, whatever might be ready to deal with whatever those local issues are in that area. So it's an area, and our planning division has been really kind of charged by me to focus on that over the coming year.
Okay, that's great to hear, especially from a planning perspective, because I know in the past, if I've asked somebody about a project, it's, well, this committee over here is working on this project, and it seems like there might not be quite as much coordination. So like you said, I think if you can segment them into different, well, this organization is responsible for these types of projects, I think that could be helpful so that you don't have overlap, especially given that the MPOs are federally required. And then the other question I had was related to system size, because at 41,000 miles, is that center lane miles or is that like lane miles?
So that's center lane miles. So that's basically usually one center lane miles equals 2 lane miles unless you got a multi-lane facility.
Okay. 'Cause I know we're comparing to other states as well, and we've got like such a massive system. I think I've read or heard that we have cemeteries that are on the state road system. Is that accurate?
There was a thing called the Beltline Acts in the 1940s and 50s, and so every so often there is a cemetery driveway that's considered a state highway. There are school driveways. I would say our commission, when school gets renovated or rebuilt, we're usually handing back the school bus loop on that. But what I would say is a lot of roads were brought into the system in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it really wasn't until our commission kind of capped the system back in the 1990s that we were growing and we're adding roads that were subdivision roads or roads that you might consider a city or a county road elsewhere.
Thank you. And I know what you're talking about, because you'll have like a older subdivision with a lot of ranch style homes, and you go into it and it's all state roads that are in this subdivision with a lot of houses. And it just doesn't seem like that just doesn't work to have a state be responsible for neighborhood roads. And if there's any way that we can kind of shed some of this dead weight, I think it would let our state government, DOT, do an even better job on what you're already doing right now. So those are the only 2 questions I had today, at least. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Garvin.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary Powell, for being here today. A couple of quick thoughts, and then I'm going to lead into my question. I know during your presentation you mentioned that for 30 years that we deferred maintenance on our roads and that we didn't do any new improvements. And I think we now see the consequences of that deferment. And the chairwoman, someone alluded to it as well, is that we hear oftentimes that we're not spending our dollars here in South Carolina in the best way, but I think infrastructure is and improving in our roads and our bridges is one of the best ways that we can spend our money. During your presentation, Secretary Powell, you talked about and you alluded to that we really can't rely on the federal government for some funding. And so my question is this: have we seen any decrease in federal funding recently? And if we haven't seen any, do we anticipate that we may see some? If we see some, what do you need from this General Assembly? How do we mitigate any cuts that we may see?
So in terms of, there have been there was one program that was held that was related to electric vehicle charging infrastructure. That got restored last week, so we have those funds again. We haven't seen any major funding cuts or any challenges from there. The reauthorization, so they every 5 years they go and re-up the transportation bill. We saw a pretty significant increase in funding between the one that passed previously in 2021. That was about a 30% increase in the funding. I think all the indications we've heard is that we should be prepared not to see a similar rate of growth, and we should be prepared for reductions. One of the things that I've been advocating in my role with the National Association of DOTs has been to focus on the formula funding, the dollars that we come into the DOT that fund our projects and that we rely upon, to preserve that and focus that, and maybe not do as many of these discretionary grants that were going on that have had good results for South Carolina but have not been spent as well in other states. So I think that's going to be the discussion. What I can't tell you is a dollar amount right now. We haven't seen the legislative text yet to know what impacts, if any, were going to happen into South Carolina. But my hope is, one of the things I'm hearing is a lot of emphasis towards flexibility towards states to best deliver programs that meet to their needs.
Very good. And one just quick follow-up question. As it relates to customer service, so when a citizen reaches out to the department, is there a hotline that they call, and do they receive a follow-up call or email? What does that look like?
So we maintain so folks can call their county offices. We also maintain a call center. 1-855-GO-SCDOT is the 800 number to call. We also maintain on our website a online work order system that will basically, you get a response email almost immediately, and then we close those out. And gotten a lot of positive feedback from that, but it's an opportunity for folks to call in that pothole. And even if it's a city or a county road, we'll let you know that that's a city or county road and give you the number to call for that as well.
Fantastic. And I want to just quickly say there was an issue in my district, and we called about it, and it was quickly resolved. So thank you to your staff for what you all do. It is really and truly appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Representative Willis, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Secretary Powell, thank you for being here today, and I think that I can speak for everyone here how much we appreciate Alan and Ted. They're so responsive, and it really amazes me, and I've told you this before, and them, that it amazes me how it's our districts, but we can mention a road in it, and you quickly know that road. You quickly know that intersection, and we appreciate that. We appreciate David Vaughn and us, Representative Vaughn. I appreciate you coming up and meeting with us recently and being in our districts for a little bit. You alluded to something a little bit ago. I'm a very simple-minded fella, and you were talking about retiming signals and directional signs. You know, one of the number one phone calls I get from people are about how people are quick to tell me what DOT needs to do. And they're always saying, many times it is something simple, like that red light lasts too long, or that red light is too short, or there's no signal to turn left, and we can never get left. We've got to go several blocks around. And I really appreciated your thoughts of looking at how to perhaps reevaluate some of those signals and some of those directional signs, and perhaps maybe adjusting those to the traffic flow. As most people here, especially in the upstate, as you well know, because you lived there and worked there, we're experiencing so much growth, and the regular roads that people are taking from their homes in the country or their neighborhoods, perhaps maybe if those simple things are addressed, just like a turn signal on a street, it would alleviate that traffic from sitting for 20 minutes to get out and going 4 cars at a time, 5 cars at a time. And I appreciate that, and I hope that y'all will strongly look at that as far as finding ways to help the population growth and people get to work, church, health, and their daily routines.
No, and I think we've got to look at retimings now. We don't control every signal system. A lot like at City of Greenville in your area, they actually run the signal system on our behalf up there. But one of the programs we've initiated is a transportation system management and operations is what we call it, or TSMO. But what it does is basically we're very focused on signal retimings because you can get good efficiencies from there. But to your point, everybody is a traffic engineer, and so we'll always take those feedback as well.
Thank you, and I know you travel through my district a lot, going to your mother and father-in-law's house, and you see those areas where the timing of those red lights make a huge difference when they're changed, and we appreciate it.
Well aware of the issues on 418.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Representative Vaughn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary Powell. Appreciate you being here. I'll echo Representative Willis. We appreciate all that y'all do, and spending time with us. I wanted to touch on 2 things. One, you mentioned it in your presentation about the Port Authority. I'd like for you to share with this committee what it is that the growth numbers that they're talking about and how big they are. And also within that, touch on, Greenville has a big inland port, and everybody here, the increase in what comes in the inland port that will be traveling our roads, there is a lot of highway travel, but the last couple miles is where you see a lot of the wear and tear. So I didn't know if that had been looked into or something that could be looked into with the growth at the port.
Yeah. No, so Port of Charleston right now moves about 2.5 million containers per year. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Port Authority, separate state agency, but they move about 2.5 million containers per year. So that is the 8th largest container port in the country. They're in the process of, they've opened the Leatherman. So most of that goes through the Wando terminal in Mount Pleasant. They're opening a terminal, Leatherman Terminal in North Charleston. They have just opened it. They're still continuing to expand it. That will basically double the capacity of the Port of Charleston, for adding another capacity for another 2.5 million containers there as well. But upriver, they maintain another terminal in North Charleston. It's relatively small, but they have just acquired the old Meade-Westvaco plant in North Charleston, and with plans to have that facility add 5 million more containers. That will require us, as we do the 526 project that we were talking about, we've got to make the Don Holt Bridge about 30 feet higher so they can get the container ships in there. But you're talking about basically having the ability to move 10 million containers through Charleston right now, where we've got about 2.5 million coming through. So rail will be a big part of that, but I think I-26 is bad now. It's part of the reason why we're driving ahead with widening that interstate is really to deal with those boxes moving up.
Thank you for that. The second thing I wanted to touch on was in the world of business, which is my world, to cut inventory. It's always a quick and easy way to work on the bottom line. I know we have a big inventory. Have we looked at, I know we talked some about it, just to share with us some of the possible ways that you've looked into what we've done in the past and what maybe could be planned in the future in cutting inventory, possibly to take some of the burden off of the
In terms of reducing the road network. So today we already give away roads. So at most commission meetings, we're reducing the system 1-2 miles per meeting, where local governments have come in. I know Fountain Inn has come in and asked us to take over roads, I think in every one of your jurisdictions. So I think the challenge is that there are communities in the state that probably have the institutional capacity that handle new roads. Now it's going to be a money issue for them, but we have a lot of counties in the state that just don't necessarily have that institutional capacity. I know of one rural county in this state where they own one backhoe for 500 square miles. So to dump that road burden onto them would be a major burden on them. So I think if you're going to talk about reducing the inventory, I think you have to talk about it in voluntary terms. What are the ways that would incentivize a local government to take on that responsibility, whether that's changing maybe the distribution formula for CTCs, if there are additional authorities, what kind of sugar or honey could be put in the pot that could help do that? Because this problem started in the 1930s. It kind of stopped in the 1990s when the system was capped at that point in time. So you're talking about an issue that's been going on for decades. And so I don't see it being a silver bullet to immediately change things, but it is something that I think we could look at and would certainly allow local governments part of the burden and the state focus on the higher priority roadways.
Great. Thank you for that.
Representative Stavronakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time with me in Charleston recently, and appreciate your staff so much, as others have echoed, and the crew you have in Charleston are amazingly responsive and just great folks to work with. I've been at this for a while now, both state and local, and I will tell you that in my view, the SCDOT today is the most efficient and transparent and effective that it's been in all the 25 plus years that I've been involved in government. At the same time, frustration where I live is higher than it's ever been with regard to road congestion, road safety. And you and I have talked about this, and I've talked to your staff about it, and there are a lot of different reasons for it. Like, people always want one simple answer. What's causing this? What's the fix? And usually both the causes and the solutions require a lot of explanation, and it's not one thing. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. You mentioned a few things, and other members have mentioned things that I think are important. One of the things is that we have a very dysfunctional system when it comes to, who is responsible for approving most of the growth that an area like mine is experiencing versus who's responsible for the roads, most of them, as we've heard, like an outsized, probably, proportion of the roads. Representative Wetmore and I and others in the House, and I think there's a companion Senate bill, have tried to propose some changes, and hopefully things like that will be part of a discussion that we can have either, as part of this or ancillary to it. I don't know if you have any, thoughts you want to offer on how to fix, that fractured system of responsibility between creating need and addressing that need. But I would certainly welcome your thoughts about that. We also have heard talk about, the size of your network. I hear all the time, right? That's a DOT road, that's a state road, you need to call your representative and your senator. Well, all the growth on it wasn't a State House decision or a DOT decision, right? So again, an example of that dysfunction. We talked a while back, a few years ago, Representative Hickson and I were just talking about it. There was some effort to give some roads back to the local governments, and as I may be wrong about this, but my recollection was that when push came to shove, they walked away from that responsibility or welcoming that, and maybe what was missing is some of what you talked about. But of course, any additional thoughts you have on that, I would welcome. And I want to talk about something that, before I let you respond, that I see coming that I think is problematic, at least from where I live. Part of the frustration that I get from folks is like where in Charleston, I think we were the first, certainly one of the first, to enact a local option sales tax. We've spent a lot of money on state roads, but of course, it has not been nearly enough to keep up with the ever increasing demands and needs. That has created a level of frustration. People have taxed themselves and have not seen enough benefit from it. Adding on top of that is we increased the gas tax, and you outlined where that money went. But if you're a person sitting in traffic in Charleston or Columbia or Greenville or wherever, Myrtle Beach, wherever these high growth areas are, it's no comfort to you when you can't get home to your family or when your roads are dangerous and there are wrecks that tie up an entire region for hours on end. So there's increasing frustration that they tax themselves locally and their state taxes went up and they're not seeing a return. Literally, I would imagine if you calculated it for Charleston, for Myrtle Beach, and for a few other regions, they're getting back literal, I don't know what the percentage would be. It would be minuscule compared to what they're contributing that goes into the statewide network for improving roads. So we have to address this, and we have to have a way of communicating with people that change is coming and that it's going to make sense, it's going to address these needs. So I know that's a lot. I'll let you, and I got one more thing before you finish, but I'll let you try to jump in on all that and see what you can suggest to us, because we've got a lot of frustrated people that are paying a lot of the bills.
No, I understand that, and having grown up in Charleston area, I still hear from my parents who live in District 110 about the traffic down there. So I'll try to tackle what I can here. So I think it's important to note how we distribute funds, how we look at our projects. So I think that notion of areas not getting their fair share. So let me say that. I think I hear that from every region in the state.
Yeah, everyone.
I'll just kind of summarize at a very high level where our dollars are going. Pavements are allocated based on lane miles. So if you have 1,000 lane miles in your county, then you're getting, there's out of 41,000, you're getting 1/41 of the money for it. Bridges are based on condition, where the bad bridges are and where we have the findings on that. Safety follows crashes. So where we put our money, where the crashes are. So that tends to be, in a lot of cases, our urban areas, because that's where we have the most number of wrecks, but we have a high rural rate, so we allocate funds there. The funds we put to our MPOs and COGS are solely based on, absent kind of setting a minimum floor of $5 million between every region. It's based on the number of people in that county or that region. So it's based on population. We actually looked at changing it and basing it on traffic, and there was only one region in the state that actually benefited out of that, and that was Myrtle Beach, and it was because of the high tourist volumes that occur there relative to other regions. So we do try to, I think what we're dealing with, though, is we have a 30-year backlog on maintenance. So we're digging out of that issue. We're dealing with the reality that South Carolina's growth rate has rapidly accelerated. And so those challenges weren't necessarily contemplated in 2017. It was the menu of options that were put out there was really focused on maintenance rather than trying to start dealing with that congestion issue. So what I would say is that this issue is, again, coming back to your last question, is we are having local governments issue permits. We're having issues without necessarily considering that road impact. I think the question is what's the mechanism for dealing with that? We rely upon heavily on those MPOs to help guide that investment where we need to do it. And so I think that's where the conversation is got to happen, and what means and mechanism might that look like, I think is something that this committee is going to have to take a look at.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you agree that disconnect has to be addressed, like between.
What I would say is, there are issues. I mean, Johns Island is the poster child for it. I would say right now of, the plan for the longest time was an extension of the Mark Clark Expressway onto the island. That's what was in the regional plans. That referendum did not pass, and so there's other considerations there. But at the end of the day, the local governments there were signing permits, in anticipation of a road improvement that's probably not going to happen. But I would say we have that issue across the state of a land use decision being made, and then, that outcome. We can only do so much in the encroachment permit process.
So a couple other things I want to talk about is the signalization issue that Representative Willis raised. So, and I know that this is a lot, again, local government, but I think we got to set some standards. This is an area of like serious frustration for me and for the folks I represent. I represent the heart of my district has several corridors that cannot be widened, right? Savannah Highway is not going to be widened. Folly Road is not going to be widened. It's about efficiency of moving vehicles through those corridors or building, capacity that runs parallel or adjacent to those corridors. I see private industry using camera technology, AI technology, light years ahead of what is on the ground in some of these corridors. Like if we're going to give them this responsibility and totally defer to them, I think we need some standards. I mean, this has to be, in some of these areas, this has to be modernized. Is that something you would recommend to us? I mean, that's what I think. I think we need to give you guys the power to set some standards in certain communities with certain traffic counts, that this technology needs to be the latest and greatest to move vehicles in those corridors.
So one of the things I would note is, we do let local governments operate our signal systems in your area, City of Charleston and Greenville, about their agreements that are across the state. That actually helps stretch our budget because they're putting in their local resources to manage the signals. So if we were to take back signals or to change that would be an increase in our budget because we don't necessarily have the personnel to maintain all those signal systems that have been done. But one of the things we've been doing is that TSMO program I was talking about with Representative Willis is we've been also working with the local governments to say, here's the signal retiming plans for that corridor that you can move more throughput through. So, cameras can work, in-ground sensors, but there are a variety of ways that you can work to improve that, sometimes low tech, sometimes high tech.
Okay. And I wasn't advocating to take it back. I just think we need some standards to make sure it's maximized and that those corridors are moving at maximum efficiency. Last thing, I hate to dominate so much time, is for a lot of our major metropolitan areas, we're not going to be able to build our way out of this no matter what we do. And we need to change the way we view transit, in my opinion. And that cannot be a localized thing. I just don't see how it works. I think the state, starting with the General Assembly, to be quite honest with you, I've talked to you, I think you get it. I think the state's view of this needs to change, and would just welcome any comments you have about how important you think transit's going to be in our major metropolitan areas moving forward.
So what I would share is we are working closely with CARTA, the Charleston Transit Authority, and the Berkeley-Charleston-Dorchester Council of Governments on what will be the first bus rapid transit system in South Carolina, which is a bus that kind of acts like a subway system. I think that'll be the first one. We've agreed to be the construction manager on that project, so I think it's going to be the first major step, because I think at a certain point you can't widen just geographically in Charleston, you can't widen I-26 more. So I think it's going to be an option. Obviously, it's a choice at the end of the day between driving and riding a bus, but I think there's an opportunity with that project to see what we can do more as it goes forward.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your work on that project and you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hickson.
Got it. Thank you, Madam Chairman, Mr. Secretary. I want to brag on you. Aiken County has I-20. And a few weeks ago, we had a tractor trailer hit a bridge on I-20 with 8,500 gallons of diesel fuel in it. Burned the bridge up. Shut the whole interstate down, east and westbound. In 36 hours, your team had that open. I was out there with Mr. Leapart and spent most of Sunday out there with them, watching them do it. Had to repave the road. had to put up new guardrails, had to do everything and haul it all off. That's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen get that done that fast. Had to open up asphalt plants, had to bring all these people in from Atlanta with these clinchers to bust all that stuff up. That was unreal. And thank you for allowing me to be there on the scene to look at it. Your crew did a wonderful job, so thank you very much. That's a very good sign that SCDOT has got it going on.
We appreciate it, sir. And again, I think it's our team and our contractor partners were the ones that made it happen. We appreciate you. I think you had a rake behind there when the asphalt was being put down.
I did.
We appreciate it.
I would have jumped on one of those machines if I could. One of the things, being on the Ag Committee, I represent the poultry industry, I represent the forestry and all that. With all these bridges that we're talking about that are weight limited and things like that, is there a provision that maybe we can sit down and talk about to try to help these? Because I believe I was told if one of these tractor trailers with chickens or logs or whatever has to go out of its way, it's about $4.50 a mile that they're having to pay or having to spend on fuel and stuff. I would like to work with you in trying to find some kind of resolution until we get these bridges fixed.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the conversations, so we've engaged with the trucking industry as well as a couple interests in the forestry community as well, bringing in our staff as well as the transport police, because I think we had a all too real realization a few weeks ago. I represent Bowers District where we had an oversized truck cause a bridge collapse on us. And so there's a lot more attention to it, but I think there's opportunities as we work to deal with these posted bridges, because we just have a huge number of bridges that were built in the 1950s with timber piles and concrete slabs that are not built for today's trucks, that we just have a proliferation across the state. So we've got a challenge, but we're willing to work with the industry to try to figure out ways to help mitigate it while we repair the issues.
Thank you. One more thing. You and I have talked about this, about the sign, these monster signs that are along the interstate. I know you got the green ones and you got the blue ones.
Yes, sir.
But to me, when they lay down on the ground for months or longer than that sometimes, that just shows to the people traveling through our state that maybe we don't care. But I know we do. Can you explain that process about how we get those big signs up and the difference between the green ones and the blue ones, please?
Okay. So kind of the green signs are the ones put up by the DOT. So that's your directional signage that tells you, the exit over here, all of that. The blue signs are from our logo program. So we actually put that out to RFP. We get about $6 million per year from the company that sells the spot to say McDonald's is here or BP is there.
And they put them up, the blue ones?
They put them up and they maintain it. So that's part of a kind of our cost share with them on that. So the green signs for on the interstate, because of just the sheer size of those signs, we don't necessarily have the equipment to go in there. So we maintain 3 contractors that kind of work different sections of the state to put them up there. But, one of I think the challenges has been there were supply chain issues back during the pandemic on that. And so we work with them on that, but there's a lead time to get those replaced. One of the things that we've done, Deputy Secretary for Engineering, Rob Perry, and I, we kind of made a focus of when they were toppled over halfway and the breakaway was up there, let's at least knock them down, clean it up, go from there. The other thing is we actually maintain a sign shop out in Northeast Columbia where we make the regular, not off interstate signs. And we've been big about making sure our districts get out there, and if it's a milepost sign or just an exit sign that they can get up there and fix, having them out there. But it's a constant challenge. Public always finds a way to run into one of them, and so we're constantly out there. But it's an area where we're improving and continue to do it. But I appreciate the feedback on it.
Thank you. One more thing. This is quick. Whenever we doing this modernization of DOT, I hope you consider some kind of way of when you go from one county to the next, it's not going to another state, because lots of times they pave this pretty road over in Edgefield County, whatever, and they don't pave the road in Aiken County, but it's still the same state road. So lots of times the worst part is in the part you didn't pave in a different county, but that's a different county. So hopefully we try to come up with some kind of way we can all work with that together. So thank you. And again, thank you for what you do.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Representative Guffey.
Sir, Thank you for coming up here, and a lot of my questions have kind of been addressed by other reps as we went through. But, you know, we talked about the county handling roads versus state, and I heard your comments with Representative Vaughn that kind of addressed a lot of that. But is there a set way that we have that dictates how C funds must be used whenever they're given back to the local government?
So basically it's established in law. So basically there's a amount that has to be spent on the state roadway network. It's about a third has to go to the state roadway. But beyond that, the local governments are basically limited to just the public roads. So it can be a city road, it can be a county road or a state road. That committee basically makes that decision from there.
Okay, but I mean, as far as how it is divided up, or does it just go to the municipality and they decide? Because whenever it was a huge learning process whenever I got on county council to learn that we were responsible for C funds, how that money went. You know, western part of my county, they were using it to spray dirt roads to keep dust down. Whereas some of the other districts that have the high traffic, they could have used that money, but it was just divided up very evenly.
Yeah, so state law establishes, so the law was changed in '93, basically the same time as many of the other reforms were going on. Each county has a CTC committee. Now, the legislative delegation in that county can make a decision to delegate that to their county council. There's a couple other counties that have delegated it to their county council to appoint the members of it through different legislation. But the funding, so the gas tax is collected at the depots. So there's one in North Augusta, there's one in Spartanburg, there's one in Charleston. And is that 3.99 cents is divided up by a formula of 1/3 of the, and this has been in state law for a long time, so it's a local legislative decision. It's 1/3 based on the land area of the county, 1/3 based on the mileage of the roads outside of municipalities in a county, and 1/3 on the population. Okay. So that's kind of how the funds get distributed out. There is also a thing called the donor bonus, which is for counties where the DOR has determined have had more gasoline sales sent out from that county, and they get basically part of it back. And so there's $20.5 million that gets divided up amongst those donor counties. It typically is your large urban counties or donor counties. It can also be a county with a major interstate in it, like a Cherokee, where you've got a lot of traffic and people pulling over to buy gas because it's on I-85.
Okay, and that kind of brings me to my next thing. In the this year's budget, the breakdown of the gas tax, as far as for field maintenance, we had, it's 10 cents. The new gas tax trust fund, 10 cents, 6 cents. For required transfers to other entities. And then it had the federal match. And then the one thing that I had, it says other projects and programs is less than 1 cent. What exactly is that?
It would be programs like doing the signs, doing the signs and markings. So we don't get, I think it's an important thing to note, and I think that chart, and we can distribute to the whole county committee, is, the 28.75 cent gas tax does not come entirely back to the DOT. There's a part that has to go to the SIB. There's a part that goes to DNR for boat landings. There's a part that goes to the county transportation committee. So you hear that 28.75 cents number, but it actually gets divvied up a bunch of different ways.
And whenever you were talking about electric vehicles, you mentioned guardrails. I asked Representative Brewer to kind of try to explain it to me a little bit because I didn't understand that. Can you explain that to everyone? Because I think that's important to understand as we're dealing with more.
I'm going to ask a finance person to do engineering. But what I would say is an internal combustion vehicle, if your guardrail is like this, the internal combustion vehicle, the weight, where the guardrail is positioned, the weight of the engine is going to hit the guardrail right there. But with an electric vehicle, your weight is in the bottom. It's in the floorboard basically of the vehicle. So the guardrail has a gap underneath it. So what your risk is that the force would keep going underneath the guardrail rather than hitting the structure.
But does that mean that, so as we increase, we'll probably need to update all of the guardrails as well?
What I would anticipate is that there will be a national standard change, so we rely upon national standards set by a national association, and I would expect that they're going to change the guardrail standard at some point to deal with the differential in weight between internal combustion and electric vehicle.
All right, thank you. I think everything else has pretty much been answered. Thank you.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Secretary. Thank you very much for your time and for this very helpful information. I too want to piggyback on Representative Stavronakis's comments about District 6. They are wonderful. They are responsive, and I think as I listen to my colleagues and I think back about my time with y'all, there's never been an issue with y'all's response. You always work hard. You do everything you can to deal with the issues that are before you. But we're trying now, I think, to look forward. And so one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was I believe it was a coordinating council. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me as to what you envision that looking like?
Sure. So, at statutory, I'm a member of the Coordinating Council for Economic Development. So there's Secretary Lightsey leads that committee, but it includes people from Parks Recreation, the Director of Parks Recreation Tourism, the Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Transportation, all those state agencies, Department of Revenue, that have that role of kind of establishing the state's economic development future. And so we go through projects and things like that that are coming before us. We have a series of state agencies, so the Port Authority, Palmetto Railways, Aeronautics, DOT, we all play a role in moving South Carolina forward. So my thought would be is to have a similar body with representatives from those agencies so that when we do a long-range plan like the Momentum Plan, that body is looking at that whole planning context together so that we're balancing airport needs along with port needs with roadway needs as well.
All right, so I definitely think that is something that would be a benefit not only to us but to the state as a whole. The lane miles issue, we looked at my year as chairman back in 2018. 7 years have gone by now. Do you think it's time to look again at some alternatives to how we can distribute money aside from just lane miles and look more at, as Representative Stavronakis was saying, at congestion in the places that are experiencing the most growth and the most traffic, getting probably a greater share of the pie than a place that's not having as much traffic?
What I would say is, we did that formula calculation back at that time. And again, the paving dollars are looking at just rehabilitating roads. So it's not necessarily adding lane miles or anything like that. It's just milling and filling from there. I think the issue is whether you're in Charleston County or Greenville County or you're in Bamberg County or Abbeville County, everybody still has a bad road on that network. And so I think the lane miles make sure that we have every part of the state of South Carolina seeing the benefit of improved roadway conditions. So I think, when you look at it, I think your conversation is more about the congestion issue. The wear and tear still happens, whether it's out in the country or in the city as well. So I think what we were seeing was that you would have any other formal way of doing it, you were taking away from a mile or two from a rural county to get an extra mile or two of paving done in an urban county. So I think that's a trade-off. I mean, that's something that can be looked at, but it's the same time you are talking about it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day of one pie might shrink to grow another pie.
And I appreciate that, and I would just encourage you to keep an open mind about these issues, because I just don't think we can continue to do business the same way we've always done it, given the numbers that Chair Lady Crawford was throwing out earlier and Chairwoman Erickson. The population numbers and the expense are just too great. And on that topic, I mean, the gas tax began in 2017. It's hard to believe we're almost 10 years into it now, but what are your thoughts about funding going forward? I know when the legislation was being debated 10 years ago that the DOT asked for significantly more money than the legislature gave, but we're now maxed out at the 12 cents and costs are going up. So what are your thoughts about funding from 2025 forward?
Well, I think I kind of hit on several of them in my presentation. I think we've got to have a conversation about that EV fee, and it won't be a huge revenue boost to the agency, but it's a fairness issue and it preserves our revenue. But I think at the end of the day, we have a relatively diverse revenue stream in terms of DMV fees, general funds, gas tax, as well as the car sales tax coming into it. Ultimately, that's a legislative decision, but if there's a desire to increase the amount being done, I think you're going to have to look at funding at the end of the day, being able to do that, because as I indicated earlier, the inflation is causing us to do fewer projects. A few years ago, we were putting out 1,000 miles of paving projects. We're down to 700 miles now. And that's just not because of any change in the growth of the pot has stayed the same. The cost of doing business has increased in that time.
And then I guess lastly, if the municipal association and/or different cities across the state want to sit down and talk about a transfer of roads, are you willing to do that?
I've already had conversations with the municipal association, the county association, and happy to continue those conversations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a few more members, and then we're going to roll right into our public input. So Representative Montgomery.
Thank you, Chair Lady Crawford. Thank you, Mr. Powell, and your commission, and Ted and Alan. I appreciate all y'all do. I'll try to be brief because I know we're going long. A lot of the questions that I would have liked to have asked have been answered for my colleagues' questions, which I appreciate. If you don't know this figure off the top of your mind, I would appreciate it if you could get it and distribute it to this committee or published it in all the newspapers. What it would cost to add a lane, to at least have 3 lanes from state line to state line on I-26, I-95, and I-85, what that would cost. Because I assume it's something in 2050, Momentum 2050.
So we have a priority list of rural projects. We don't necessarily have like the entire, our priority list right now for 95, what's been approved by the commission is long range. So let me put it as long range is 95 from the border to 26, and then from I-20 up to the North Carolina line, 26 between Charleston and the 385, 26 split. We can give you a ballpark estimate based on what we are
give or take
seeing,
$1 billion.
but I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Right. I think
it'd be well into the billions.
Probably 20 billion or 30 billion, right?
My gut would be it'd be well in excess of $10 billion, but we can get you a specific estimate.
That would be great. Which I think those many billions of dollars is what we need to start talking about, so that when we talk, DMV fees and EV fees are not going to get us there. So you may not want to say it, but I would say that we need to revamp our gas tax, 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents. I don't know what it is. And put an escalator on it, which unfortunately wasn't. Am I correct in saying there was no escalation done on it when it was done in 2017?
We don't have indexing in South Carolina.
Okay, so I think what you've heard today is everybody has constituents that complains about roads, and so I would, in my opinion, I'm a freshman and new to this, that if people complain, that they ought to be able to pay for it. And I think that when we in Spartanburg County raised did a referendum that passed a 1 cent sales tax, we said, a lot of this is going to be out-of-state traffic, which you and I have talked about. So the other thing is I know you have priorities, but in your planning for the next 5 to 10 years, between Spartanburg and Greenville, specifically on I-85, to add, probably you need 2 or 3 lanes, and I know you're talking about, some other side roads. I believe there's at least one bridge, if not 2, that need to be widened, fixed, between those 2. And if that engineering takes 2 years, and then it takes 2 years to bid it, and then 2 years of construction, you're, say, 6 years before that could happen. Is there a way to speed that up?
So I think what you're talking about, so 85 corridor right now, we have a planning study going on about what would we need to do on that corridor. So
Okay.
that's
So you're working
underway
on it
right now. To at least kind of get the order of magnitude of what improvements would be needed to be done. When we do an interstate project right now, so I use example of the 85 project up in Cherokee County, 26.
Right.
Here coming into town between Little Mountain and Irmo. What we do now is we're not just widening the main line and adding another lane in there. We are basically comprehensively replacing all the bridges and the overpasses basically so it can handle 8 lanes of traffic in the future. So we're building it in for that. But when they did the 85 widening back in the 90s, it was basically slap in a lane and work within the existing bridge footprint there.
Well, I appreciate your vision and looking further out into the future. Lastly, if you could just mention to this committee, I believe you called it safety money. When I drove down from Spartanburg today, I saw where there were 2 different places where a tree in the last 24, 48 hours had fallen across the road because there were limbs still in the middle of the road. And I know, I'm an environmentalist. I love trees too, but I see all the time driving 26 and then 20 to Aiken that they're just trees falling in the road. And to what it costs and how do we help you fund, whatever that distance is so the trees stop falling in the interstates?
So kind of so we have about $130 million per year on safety projects. So 50 million is for the Rural Road Safety Project program that I talked about.
Thank you.
There's about another 80 million in federal funds. One of the programs we fund, and how much do we do on interstate? Yeah, 17 million of that money is basically put on interstate safety projects. A big component of it is basically clearing the right of way, so cutting back the trees. So the focus is less about falling trees getting into the roadway, but people hitting the trees as they get off. Because if you hit a guardrail, you hit a cable barrier, you have a good chance of surviving that crash. If you hit a tree, you don't have a good chance of surviving that crash. So that's been the focus on that. And so we basically selected those corridors where the crashes are occurring, and then we basically go in and do a clearing that makes sense in that area.
And that's all federal money then?
That's federal money, yes, sir.
So how would, if we wanted to increase that, could we match it, or is there, how would we go about doing more of it?
It's similar to the Railroad Safety Program. The Railroad Safety was actually mandated in the Act 40 that we would dedicate $50 million a year for railroad safety.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Rivers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Secretary Powell, thank you for your presentation. As you talked about and explained your strengths, your weaknesses, and opportunities, and your threats. We're about to have public testimony, so I don't want to say a whole lot. I appreciate when we had the opportunity to meet down in Beaufort, and I look forward to talking to you and your staff in the very near future. And again, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Representative Lawson.
Thank you, Co-Chair Lady, and thank you, Secretary Powell. My question today is going to be around workforce, and if you could talk to us a little bit about that, about where we stand on the status of contractors and DOT employees. And I've heard a lot of talk, and obviously it takes money to expand roads, to widen roads, to build new roads, bridges. But hypothetically, if we were to, say the legislature next year decided to move that $200 million to $1 billion, do we even have the workers that could spend that money, or is it just going to sit there?
So, I think one of the things we've been focused on internally has been filling our maintenance forces. And so that, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we made a pretty significant pay increase. So I would say is we have good, statewide, my fill rate is about 89% right now for all positions. what I would say is we have trouble in some of the coastal counties where people moving in are not necessarily moving into work, they're moving in to retire. In terms of industry capacity, the workforce on it, I think when we look at that, we try to be strategic about signaling to the industry, hey, there's going to be growth here, you need to be prepared for it. And that was one of the reasons why the gas tax was phased in back in 2017, was basically to allow the industry the opportunity to buy the equipment, start hiring the employees to do that. So I would say when we look at things, we got to be prepared to give that time for the industry to ramp up accordingly. They'll respond when they have that kind of notice. One of the things that we support our contractors do is what's known as Be Pro, Be Proud, which is really focusing on trying to get folks into trades jobs because that's an area with high schoolers. So it's an area that we work closely with DO on trying to make sure that workforce is there.
But where are we at today?
So in terms of?
If you were allotted, say, $400 million more today, would we be able to spend that, or would it sit for a year? Would it take us 2 years to get those contractors? I just hear, I mean, obviously money is what it takes to do these projects, but money doesn't necessarily do it. It's the folks out there working.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, is money the only answer, or do we need to phase that in to get the workforce there so that the money can be spent? Because if we give you an extra, again, hypothetically speaking, $1 billion, if it sits in an account in the bank, that's not alleviating traffic problems.
I think it's a fair question. I think what would need to be done is having an honest and forthright dialogue with the industry. Right now, I feel like, this past year, the General Assembly provided us $200 million more for bridges. Our budget normally is about $239. I felt comfortable that the industry could absorb that increase because what we were looking at when we look at our bids, if you have multiple people chasing, multiple firms chasing a project, that's a sign that there's appetite and hunger. And we were seeing 4 to 6 firms putting in for our bridge projects. I would say with the ramp up recently, the most recent bidding that we saw, we were seeing the same thing, 4 to 6 firms putting in. So I think it's making sure where you put it and then having that dialogue with the industry, which we do. I mean, I meet probably more than quarterly with the industry, both the consultants and the contractors, about the challenges they have. And so I think that'd be the discussion about how do you prepare for that kind of issue coming forward.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Representative Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Secretary Powell, thanks for being here. Obviously, I've talked to you and Ted so much lately. I'm probably on Do Not Disturb with Ted at this point. But I appreciate being here. Don't envy your position at all. So thank you for coming up with creative solutions to fix this and for being here today. You mentioned earlier that y'all have got $7 billion of potential pending projects out there in South Carolina right now. And you talked about Florida, Georgia, Texas, and some other states that were doing a good job in various areas. How does our budget, I think we're about 6% of the total budget, just doing some quick math. How does our budget compare to some of these other states, such as Florida, Georgia, Texas, in terms of our overall budget percentage?
Well, to compare us to Texas, now I don't know relative to the Texas share, but it's several multiples bigger, but Texas is also basically, I think, 6 times larger than South Carolina. Florida's budget, they were just publishing it, is at $15 billion for their DOT right now. Again, Florida is about 5 times our size. So I think you've got to look at it. I would say our neighbors are about twice as big and their budgets are twice as big as ours.
Okay. Are there any specific funding mechanisms that you've seen from any other state? So whenever I'm looking at potential conservative bills to file or talk about or bring to a committee hearing, I look at what other states have done in the past. Is there any other states that you would ask us to take a look at that have done just a really good job of streamlining processes, cutting out regulations, supporting budget initiatives? Any other states like that we could look at?
I would say, I think, first of all, I would say South Carolina stands well amongst its peers, amongst other state DOTs. We're oftentimes right there in the middle of many of the national standards changes and discussions. And so I'd say we try to work to be a state of choice for the contractor community. I would say states that I would say right now that I've looked to say, what are you working on and steal ideas from? It'd be Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee.
Okay. My very, very intelligent roommate down here, Brian Lawson, just took my last question. So, one question I did have, the bids that go out, I know you said you feel like right now you've got 4 to 6 potential companies that come in and bid on the projects. Are those only South Carolina companies? Are the bidding projects or the bridge projects, are those opened up out of state as well? Do you
So it's basically if you can get pre-qualified and have to do the work. So we have firms from, across the country. I mean, we've had a firm from, if you remember the I-77 rehab we did down here where we had redid the bridges. I know Representative Garvin came out actually when we were out on that project. That was a Pennsylvania firm that actually came down and did it as a weekend warrior type project. So we have been seeing interest from firms out of state, but we also work to make sure that our in-state firms are growing. That's part of the dialogue that we have with the industry to make sure that we're in line and trying to deal with, cooperatively deal with the issues together.
Okay, great. And last question I have is, when we talk about 2050, right? I was in 8th grade 25 years ago. And so trying to think 25 years ahead from now, the whole world is going to be completely different than what it is today. Technology is going to be different. And when we start talking about mass transit and potential, even technology, you got drones delivering DoorDash right now, right? Are there any things that you guys are looking at to potentially consider 10 years from now, right? Because we're trying to think 25 years ahead. Is there any mass transit preferences that DOT has that y'all would like us to look at, like high-speed railways? Anything like that we should start taking a look at and seeing any other projects from, across the state, domestically or potentially internationally?
So I think what I would say is, the long-range challenge I think you're going to have to deal with, this is more on the DMV side of the house, but will be the rise of autonomous vehicles. We already hear people turning on the autopilot on their vehicles and things like that. So, that's a future regulatory issue. I tend to look at an all-of-the-above approach in terms of improvements like that. So the project in Charleston, I'm very keenly interested in and see how that is a success. I think there are models like you see in Florida and Georgia and North Carolina where you have choice lanes. That may be something that we have to take a look at. But, we didn't get on board with a lot of things going on with Amtrak in the last administration, and now we're seeing kind of the funding being clawed back. And so I felt like we were in a better place because we didn't get on a limb that a lot of other states are on right now.
Thank you. And Representative Teeple.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for being here, Justin. I really appreciated meeting with you down in my district not too long ago. I do want to point out it was actually 5 years ago he was in the 8th grade, not 20. But we do see, we had a project in our district. It started out as $100 million, and I think it's at 300 and something million now, the other for the bridge going over Stono. As far as your estimates on what's going to be an adequate level of funding to take us into the future, do you feel like that's going to be accurate if, I don't know what percentage of projects end up coming in at budget or ones that end up being, say, like that one, 300% over. Are you pretty confident in the numbers going forward on what you feel like you'll need, or with the inflationary reality that we have right now and some of these design build projects, are we going to be even in the ballpark 5 years from now based on the numbers we're seeing now?
So what I would say is when we go into bid, we work very hard to basically nail down that number. So we will go look at prior bid experience, market conditions. And I would say is by and large, of late, our bids are coming in within the tolerance that we want it to be at from our engineer's estimate of plus or minus 10%. I think nobody really anticipated a pandemic in 2020 and the inflation that came after that. And so I think a lot of us, and obviously that interchange is a county-run project down there, but you have that kind of spike in prices that I don't think anybody foresaw. So there's always that challenge of trying to predict the unknown. What I would say is that we work hard on trying to tighten our number as close as we can, knowing that when you go into the bid process, there will be a surprise from here time to time, but when you look at it on balance, our projects usually get awarded within the tolerances that we have. And then when we get in a project, we report it back out to the commission. When we get to from the first bid, every month I report this to the commission from kind of the bid to close out. that variance of projects is right now is trending about 1% under budget from where we started. But we track that to see if, in aggregate, are we still performing at that level too?
Okay, yeah, my last question was, have you started to see any stabilization in that trend?
Yes.
Post-COVID, you have?
So the spike happened basically starting in 22 through 24, and we've seen prices level out.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Chair Lady Erickson.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to wrap you up here. I want to commend, I'm just going to wrap up this session. Yeah, this section of the meeting. Yeah, thank heaven. Mr. Sessions and Mr. Hager, you will be allowed to go first and second at the next committee meeting, should you so choose, since you did not have anything to say this time. And we want it duly noted that you reserve your time for another day. Okay, so, and I was remiss, I apologize. Secretary Powell, I forgot to share the number that you shared with us, that this committee is actually now 19.6% of the House, which is pretty good standing, I think. Thank you for doing the math for us. I think we got a good cross-section discussion here. Having been on issues with you over the years where things went well and things did not go well, I know that the good work and the good intentions have always been there. And you do not get a lot of the praise. And for that, I'm sorry, because you're right. Potholes are everywhere. I would like to share with the public before you step away, though, because something we get asked a lot is, how do I report these things, right? And if you don't have the 511 app, please get it. I think Secretary Powell will tell you there's a lot of satisfaction in knowing that you report your own potholes. And to be able to say it and see it and tell somebody, because they actually do get fixed. And SCDOT.org, SCDOT.org, and our committee, and you're going to hear this several times, has a website, not a website, an email address for you to send comments to us as well. So look for that at the end of the meeting. Thank you for your work on this. Thank you for your staff's work on this. And members of the committee, thank you for your long comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. So we are now going to move into our public input section of this meeting. There will be a 5-minute limit. Emma will call your name. Please step up to the podium there where the secretary was. Make sure the microphone is on. State your name for the record, as well as where you're from or the group or association that you are here with today. Please, we ask that you be respectful of the 5-minute time frame. And, okay, Lauren has the list, and she will be calling you up momentarily. Oh, I'm sorry. Lauren will be doing the timer. Emma will be, and also, we introduced our members earlier. Let me take a quick second, please, to recognize our staff that keep this train rolling, keep us organized, and are very helpful in this process. We could not do this without them. So we have Mills Carlton here. He is our budget analyst for our Transportation and Regulatory Subcommittee, Chair on Ways and Means, or our subcommittee on Ways and Means. So thank you, Mills, for all of your work. I will let Chair Lady Erickson introduce some of our education staff that are also helping with this committee.
Emma Hall is right next to me, and she is our chief attorney for Transportation and Public Works for the Education and Public Works Committee. Lauren is our legislative liaison and admin person who keeps us all marching. And who else is here today?
Haley is here.
Haley is here. Haley is here. Haley Sims from the governor's office.
The speaker's office.
I'm sorry, speaker's office. Gee, long day, sorry. Sorry. I think that's it for right this minute. Anyway, the staff is great. We're very blessed to have them here. LSA, thank you so much for always keeping us on streamings. And that first person up, you want the first person up, or you got more?
Yeah, so again, thank you to our staff. We could not do this without you. Thank you so much. So we will also be accepting written testimony. If you did not sign up today, or if you would like to submit written testimony, please do that. We encourage that. SC House, EPW at schouse.gov. To our members, this is public input. This is the opportunity for us to hear from the public. We are not going to be debating. We're going to handle this kind of like a local government meeting. Some of you have sat through those meetings or been a part of those meetings. This is time for the public. This is not interaction. This is not debating. This is time for what my grandmother used to say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're going to do a little more listening than talking during this section so that we can listen to our constituents, listen to the public. That's what we're here for. So first up.
Mr. Kilmartin.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chairs and members of the biggest subcommittee I've ever seen. Thanks for coming out, and thank you, Secretary Powell. And I think Ted knew it was my turn to come up, so he ran out the door, because he does hear from me a lot. Who am I here with? I guess I'm here with 42,000 constituents from Chapin, Irmo, and Columbia who drive these roads every day. And I've got some opinions, like an everyday citizen would that drives these roads. So we're decades behind, in my opinion, in infrastructure, roads and bridges, as we see bridges falling down. Got some ideas. Secretary Powell, you may not like this one, but I'd like to see the lieutenant governor elected as the head of the DOT. We have a salaried public official with a full security detail who really has nothing to do, just waiting for either the governor to get appointed to another office or die. So I think that would create a lot of accountability. To Representative Stavronakis's point, we live in a bubble. There's a disconnect with who's running DOT. I mean, half my constituents don't know who Jay is. They certainly don't know who Secretary Powell is. This would create a connection when they go to the voting booth. If you were to ask 100 of my constituents, what is the State Infrastructure Bank or what is the COG, I would say 2 of them might know or have heard of it. And they're making a lot of our decisions on roads. To Representative Long's point, I think we need to give the counties back their roads. I don't know the whole history of how we became the 4th largest road and road system in the nation compared to the other 50 states, but something went awry. Why did we take all the roads? We're the 23rd largest state by population. I would say double the 3.99 cents that we give the counties from the, 28.75 cent gas tax, double that, and then slowly take the roads back. It would create a closer, I mean, there's county council meetings in every county, and there's more connect with the citizens. If you're in Horry County, you're not going to come up and look up Secretary Powell or come to the State House and complain about your roads. We need accountability there. When I first ran about 3 years ago, and I had heard about the State Transportation Infrastructure Bank, and a DOT employee came up to me and said, we need to get rid of that. That was started in 1997 to build the Ravenel Bridge. And Ronald Reagan once said, no government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. Government programs once launched never disappear. He said, nothing lasts longer than a temporary government program. What is the SIB? Why do we need it? We need to get rid of it. In conclusion, I don't know if you guys all saw this. I'd be shocked if you didn't, but we may have a surplus this coming year at the end of 2025, tax revenue, almost $800 million. I highly doubt you're going to give that back to the citizens, so why don't we just give it to the DOT? They need to catch up. They're 20 years behind, and thank you guys for coming in the, I guess it's still kind of summertime and putting your time into this, but I'd love to see some results out of this subcommittee meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kilmartin. Henry Martin.
I'm one of those guys you would say that is just an average Joe. You know, I'm one of those constituents he talks about because Jay is on my mailing list. Because I'm Henry Martin. I'm sorry. I'm from. I live in Ballantyne on Lake Murray. I was born and raised in Rosewood, so I have quite familiarity with the area. And I went to the University of South Carolina, got an electrical engineering degree. So I kind of analyzed things, and then I worked for a company called Westinghouse, and then Eaton, and dealt with industrial projects. And in fact, had South Carolina Gas was my largest customer. I won't tell you I sold them $100 million for the Jenkinsville 2 plants up there. I want to talk about that. It's still sitting up there. But anyway, what I did was 3 years ago, I got involved in, when I moved over to the lake and started having to deal with these roads around Ballantyne. And I know we can't compare to Charleston because I try to go down there. I don't like going down there anymore to see my friends. I just said, just Zoom me. We'll just talk from there. But we have a complex out there that's quite representative. And I sent you the email that I sent to the town of Irmo in the Richland County and to Bill Dukes and to the state representatives Cromer and Ballantyne because I've been talking to all of those. They take all of the inputs. And I can say after 3 years, that I've learned that the road process is quite convoluted. That's pretty much the description of that. So I've tried to educate myself, and I've actually started in social media that we have today. At 70 years old, I'm not too bad involved with social media, but in being involved with social media, I've started a Facebook page so that I can not get people to complain. I don't allow people to just get in there and throw stuff out. I got a pothole, I need it fixed. These people are sorry at the government. I'm there to try to educate them. So I'm posting meetings, trying to engage them. You know, that's one of the things we need to do a better job of. So the things that I took away from today, not to use up all my 5 minutes, hopefully, is that there's no way out of the current process has been repeated. It's going to take more time. Time means more cost, which means more funding takes more time. That's a complete circle that we just went around. You've discussed that today. And I'm really excited the fact that we've had a great discussion here, and to see all these people, this is the first time I've been here. Been before a group this big. I usually in front of town council and Richland County Council and stuff like that. But this is really exciting. So I really thank you guys for being a part of this because this might be the most important thing that we do in the next 20 years is talk about this process. And you have my information on that sheet, so I'll say in case I forget, you want to get input from me, my number and email's on there. I'd be glad to talk to you because I'd like to input into that. I think I represent a lot of people, not as an elected person, but people that look to me to give them information on how do we do this because there's a lot of apathy out there because people don't want to do anything or participate in meetings because they don't see anything happening. Okay? You don't get the road done. So I'm sure you guys hear all of that. So I'm going to give you my key points. Number one, we need to do a better job on educating the public on this process. Finding out how roads are published, I found out more, and I was an organization probably here, Fix Our Roads, South Carolina FOR or something like that. I discovered that one day, and they actually have some description on how road funding works. I couldn't find that anywhere on the state site, the county site, anywhere else, but it was good information. So we need to do a better job when we put stuff out to people, Representative Powell and this group, as to what you do. Now, the DOT, I'm on their mailing list. I get all that stuff, but education and how that gets out and people understanding how this works is not very good. And whether they choose not to, that's another problem. We need to improve the communication between the DOT, counties, towns. The discussion here is hit on about the COG. I'm not impressed with the COG situation, the way that's done. It's a lot of planning, a lot of check boxes. And I'll give you another thing that I do not like is when you go to the meetings for the county, the COG or whatever, they walk into the meeting and they invite the public meeting. This is a public meeting, and they come out with their big poster boards. And they say, welcome, come in, sign in right here, and walk around and look at the poster boards. You got any questions? These people don't even know what anything's all about. They have no clue. You got to give some explanation to them to bring them up to speed so they understand when you're talking about widening the road at Highway 6, and you put up there, here's your choices. Put up sidewalks, and let's put in some green space side to it and whatever. We ain't got any room for that. And the COG knows that. But they don't tell them that. They let them make that choice when they take their public meeting. Well, that information is useless. at that. It's really useless at that point. And in fact, at least I know they took some of my information to heart when they went over the Richland County 176 Broad River that's also in a study by the COG. Both of those are in a study that were already studied, by the way, in a 2010 COG study that was done before that they didn't do. One of them which called for having an extra exit ramp on 26 added to the to 26. Is that time up? Okay. But anyway, so if I can just say real quickly, we need to find ways to get the term concurrency is going on. So we need some control that happens at the local level with things. So I would issue, there's a discussion about that. Concurrency that stop growth or slow it down until we get some infrastructure going needs to be looked at. Thank you for your time. Call me if you need me for something else.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. We appreciate how quickly you moved through all that. And good information. All right, I'm not gonna get this last name right, so you probably already, Zach, help me out. Buer, got it, Zach Buer. Thank you.
Swedish.
Got it.
Good afternoon, Madam Co-Chairs, members of the committee. My name is Zach Buer, and I am here today representing conservation voters of South Carolina. We have been leading efforts at the State House to promote innovative land use planning tools and believe that elements of that work are of value to the issue of reducing congestion in South Carolina and maintaining our quality of life. CVSC commends the committee for considering all options as we strive to improve our infrastructure and accommodate the growth our state is facing. A core understanding that the Secretary mentioned is that congestion is not solely a product of road capacity. Local land use decisions have a large impact on congestion, and simply expanding road capacity will not solve the issues our communities are facing. Instead, we have a unique opportunity to pursue sustainable growth policies that can both generate resources for transportation capacity while promoting growth patterns that reduce congestion. Our focus should be on smarter development through strategic land use tools and policies. We've submitted written testimony that you should have in front of you that expands on some of the policies we're going to discuss, but I'm going to very briefly give you an overview of some suggestions that we feel like could be useful for this conversation. The first is local tools. Planning starts at the local level. Therefore, we believe the General Assembly should support local government tools that empower our communities to manage unchecked urban expansion into rural areas. Two tools that we have been working on are transferable development rights and concurrent infrastructure requirements. Transferable development rights, or TDRs, were introduced by Rep. Mark Smith. They're a common sense, market-based solution that directs development to areas that are better suited for growth. They protect our rural landscapes and accommodate growth without taxpayer dollars. Concurrent infrastructure requirements mentioned by Rep. Stavronakis and also the gentleman who went before me. This basically just ensures that our infrastructure is keeping pace with development. It encourages denser development where infrastructure already exists, and it prevents sprawl and makes more efficient use of our resources. This approach ensures that new developments are planned with adequate infrastructure, and importantly, developers can contribute to necessary upgrades, saving taxpayers money and the DOT. I'd also like to offer some statewide strategies that I think align a bit with what the Secretary mentioned in terms of state scale planning that would work collaboratively with local governments to promote cohesive growth patterns on a statewide scale. Implementing state-level priority growth areas that encourage multimodal transportation infrastructure development and provide incentives for infill projects or zoning incentives for increased density could help collaborate on a statewide scale. And also just tools that could help enhance planning and collaboration between jurisdictions. We encourage you to explore ways to incentivize sustainable planning policies and promote collaboration between local governments, like incentivizing urban growth boundaries with funding for planning staff, perhaps mass transit. This can help concentrate density and reduce sprawl. We also recommend collaborative jurisdictional boundaries that promote co-management of land use planning among local governments. Finally, I'd like to quickly touch on mass transit. I urge this committee to consider ways to jumpstart mass transit. South Carolina significantly lacks convenient mass transit, in part due to severely limited funding and in part due to a lack of density, which some of the tools we discussed beforehand could help with. Effective mass transit is a proven way to reduce traffic by taking cars off the road. It makes it easier for people to access work, school, and healthcare. Transit connects people to opportunity and keeps South Carolina competitive. The committee should explore transformational funding, regional partnerships, and policies like transit-oriented development. It's been a pleasure to address the committee today, and we believe that by embracing these forward-thinking policies, we can truly modernize our transportation system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfectly timed, too, yes. Regan Freeman. Welcome.
How y'all doing? Good to see you. My name is Regan Freeman. I am with an organization called Palmetto Walk Bike. Thank you all for your time. We've been around for about 30 years, actually longer than I've been alive, trying to push for safer, walkable, and bikeable and livable communities across South Carolina. Some of y'all may recognize our previous name, which was Palmetto Cycling Coalition. We just went through a rebrand, so it's good to be with you. This is definitely in our ballpark. As you hear from folks across South Carolina, starting here and as you go across the state, we heard a lot of great facts. Secretary Powell is an amazing guy. These are phenomenal people behind me doing good work. We talked about the size of our road transportation network that the state owns. I've got a new factoid for you. I really hope you bring this to heart. We are the third most dangerous state for pedestrians in the country. The third. Our major metro areas are even worse. The Charlotte Metro, which is York and Rock Hill, is 47th. The Augusta Metro, which includes Aiken, is 44th. The Greenville-Anderson area is 28th. Columbia is tied for 12th. And the Charleston Metro area is the 9th most dangerous in the country. There are no sidewalks anywhere, as you all know, as you drive around, especially in more rural areas. This is a crisis for both urban and rural places, and people are dying. 96% of the fatalities of pedestrians and bikes in this state are state-owned roads. Now, the people behind me are doing great work. They're working to fight this, but if we're talking about congestion, right, if we're talking about how we can get people from point A to point B, here's the kicker, y'all. 50% of car trips are 3 miles or less. And for a lot of these people, if you ain't got a sidewalk or a side path or any other option, let's say my church is across a highway, right? I can't walk to that church because I'm going to get hit by a car, right? I can't take my kid to school if there's no infrastructure, so I have to drive. So everybody's going on a very limited amount. There's no other alternative, and that leads to this congestion issue. So if we're looking at this stuff, it's really pennies on the dollar comparatively, right? But giving people and cities and communities the access to be able to build things like sidewalks, right? Greenways. Look at what Greenville's done with the Swamp Rabbit Trail. This is stuff that continues to build and pays dividends. Economic development, quality of life, and beyond just the fatalities, it's a public health crisis. So as y'all look at this, be creative here. I can tell you there is no specific state funding source for these multimodal projects, things like sidewalks we talk about. I can imagine how many calls y'all get from your constituents asking for things like crosswalks and sidewalks. I'm sure that's a lot, probably same with fixing the roads. So please look at this. There's a larger issue at play, and we can be creative. We can be very, very creative here. And I'll say this, we talked about, rail. I'm a fan of rail, but I'm also a dork, right? I will say, and it's something to consider, North Carolina is doing this right. It is state supported. But last year alone, they had 750,000 people take a train from their major metro areas, which means they're not on the interstate. You get what I'm saying? They're not in the car. They're taking congestion away. Now, we are not there, but I can tell you, because I checked today, our friends at SCDOT want to work with SCDOT and figure out how we can do this in a regional way, get people to our major metros, either in this state or outside of this state. So there's a lot of potential to do this right. North Carolina also has a train that is the state flag. That's what it looks like. I do want a Palmetto State train, I will say that. But again, this is long term, right? I'm 29, so I'm thinking, what is 25 years? What is 30 years? What is 50 years? I'm telling you all, this is coming. It is coming, it is coming, it is coming, it is coming. It means so much you're here and you're talking about these issues, but we have to be creative. You can't solve this by just widening, because eventually we're gonna, put ourselves into a hole, beyond just the financial implications of how expensive some of these projects are. So please look at this in a whole cloth way. I'm gonna email you all some stuff about this. I'm happy to collaborate. I look forward to meeting with almost all of you about this, because this is really important. We gotta save lives. We gotta make sure kids are safe going to school and to church. We gotta really move this forward. So thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll do some good work together. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Ralph Bell. Hi, Mr. Bell. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see everybody. Thank you, co-chairs and committee members, for your time. And this is the start of a pretty long journey, but January is right around the corner. So I'm Ralph Bell, the legislative coordinator for A-Beta South Carolina Motorcycle Rights Organization. I'm sure you guys have seen some bikers around here during the session, and I get the fun of working with those guys. I did want to kind of highlight, you guys have my written testimony, something Secretary Powell had said that I really, really think is important and we can't miss, is that they prioritize most of the projects based on safety. And I know congestion's a lot, the kind of the joke in the room is everybody get on a motorcycle, we wouldn't have it. But the safety and saving people's lives, that's something that I think the Secretary and all his staff have really worked hard on. One of the big, in my written testimony, one of the big shocks to me, after 9 years of working on hands-free, was getting on the freeway and seeing the signs. And I realized that out of all the work that everybody's done, out of all the enforcement that law enforcement done, the one little sign on the side of the road is going to make the 4 million drivers in our state think about it and make our roads safer. And that's some of the efficiency when we talk about being efficient and talk about what the Department of Transportation can do. That was a big surprise, but it hit me. I'm checking my Bluetooth. Is it working right? I mean, I'm one of the biggest advocates. So I really, it was a wake-up call. It kind of showed me some of the stuff, the hidden gems with the DOT and what they can do. And not to discount what you guys have done over the years in the committees. I deal with a lot with fatalities. I feel like Ted Creech, sometimes every biker in the state calls me about somebody that has been killed or somebody that's maimed. They call me about potholes. The part of my testimony in here, the statistical value of life, we figure $13 million. Now, my wife would probably tell you that it's around, my policy, I think it's $200,000, but, it's in there. It's a DOT figure. So when you talk about saving money also, you have to, please, as you guys don't discount these guys on what they're saving with people's lives. And I think Representative Garvin and Madam Chair Lady, you also spoke about the work request. I tell everybody, A-Beta is probably one of the most engaged organizations with you guys as constituents. I tell them, look, if you're not using the app or you're not going online, we got a lot of 80-year-old guys riding motorcycle, they can't use the app. So that's one of my suggestions, is to try different things. Maybe a PSA, maybe somebody going down the road and their wife's saying, I wish they'd fix that pothole, and he asks her, well, honey, call 1-800 or something, along that lines, because it works. It worked. I had a road where a DUI fatality had happened. There was no speed limit signs, and there was an investigator there. And I put in a little work request. They put the signs up. But I will tell you, my wife has a problem with the green light not coming on. And I told her, I said, put it in. And she said, well, they said that it's fine. And I said, well, maybe you need to be patient, honey, So, but it's very interactive. It's not, and I think it's more efficient, no offense to, your constituents and going through you guys. But I think if we could work on this over the next 2 or 3 years, the results would be better for you guys, probably be worse for our colleagues behind us. But, I think it's just a cultural thing to get the work request system, because it is there and it's easy, but a lot of people don't know about it. And, that's just, I think, if anything we could do from a constituent standpoint or from a road user standpoint, that would be really great. So, because we're the eyes and ears for everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. We always appreciate A-Beta being in the house. And Mr. Rick Todd.
Good afternoon. I'll be quick. My name's Rick Todd. For the record, I'm President and CEO of the South Carolina Trucking Association. We're an alliance of businesses that depend on trucks. The organization is 93 years old. I've been there half of its existence. I'm often viewed as the skunk at the picnic because I've been wrestling this dichotomy all that time that people want their stuff, but they don't really want the trucks that bring it. You appreciate freight and you understand it, I think, fairly well. And so we want to thank you first for being good to the supply chain, which is really driven by trucking. Every other link is a truck. So I like to say trucking is everybody's business. So for context, just a couple of things for you, but also your constituents and the public that may be viewing. As the representative of your constituents who view the world high up from their windshield, sometimes when they're reaching out to you, talk about DOT or complaining or asking questions, it probably just as easily could be about the U.S. DOT, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. That's what old truckers say is DOT. That's the federal enforcement agency. It could be about transport police. They could say highway department. So it's about law enforcement very often. But sometimes it is about roads and about DOT. But so you know, we've had decades of working together in partnership with the General Assembly to create a model agency in the State Transport Police, professional, cross-trained, and they understand commercial trucking. Regular law enforcement don't. You should appreciate that because that means you get so many fewer phone calls from your truckers because you know there's one entity to deal with when we have problems, size, weight, safety. Also, we congratulate you on finally consolidating all of the disparate services and registration and licensing requirements that truck drivers and trucking fleet owners have with registration, stuff like that, into the Motor Carrier Services Division of DMV. So that takes a lot of the hassles with our guys trying to run around different agencies of government to comply and to pay their taxes and to get licensed. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing what you're doing today and beginning this journey. It's been long deferred because nobody wants to talk about some of the issues that we've had to broach today. But this is, in my experience, a never-ending pursuit. Safety, highway capacity expansion, fixing roads. I consider myself blessed to have been working with this South Carolina General Assembly with your approach, your attitude, your philosophy. I have seen our sister counterpart entities suffer through a lot of conflict because they've been growing. Now we're growing, and we're going to see more and more of this challenge, I think, before us. So welcome to the challenge. Like everybody else seems to feel, we have a great DOT. It's been restructured, reformed over the years, this way and that. It is a great hybrid. The professionals, the peer commissioners, the processes, their performance, I think are peerless. And so thank you for going through the machinations required to put them where they are today. For raising user fees a few years ago. I don't think anybody got unelected or defeated for seeing those user fees increased to produce what we're seeing today, the road work and the expansion. Thank you for using general fund and growth monies in the meantime to do what we need to do, particularly for the bridges. So we've had a great collaborative. Truckers, there are 24,000 individual and separate motor carriers. If you got a truck, you're a motor carrier. 65% of them that call South Carolina home, of those 24,000, 65% of them are one truck owners. That means they're either an owner-operator or they're just a very small business that chooses to have the hassle and the cost and all that that's related to owning and operating that CMV, commercial motor vehicle. Over 90% of those fleets have fewer than 10 trucks. So we are a very diverse super sector collaborative supply chain that miraculously gets it done a whole lot better than I think some people want to give us credit for. Team South Carolina, as the agencies were referred to, recognizes the value of freight, and so we thank you for that. Real quick, modernization, modern implies safety and efficiency, and that's the challenge you have to wrestle with, because those expectations with technology and time are going to only increase by your constituents. So we thank you. We've given you some information to start with. As this process goes along, we welcome the opportunity to weigh in positively and encourage you. And if we can be of any assistance to answer any questions, I'm happy to. Sorry for exceeding my time and for dragging this thing out.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for being here. That is all we have on our list that signed up. Is there anybody else here today, any members of the public that wish to be heard? All right. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here today. Thank you for your public input. Thank you for your written testimony that you've submitted online. Please remember, if you're watching today or here and want to submit your written remarks, you can send those to us at scHouseEPW@schouse.gov. And to our members, if there was someone that gave public input today that you would like to contact or follow up with, touch base with, please get with our staff. They have the contact information. Happy to put you in touch with them. Thank you all so much for your patience and for listening and for your input and being involved. This is just one of many meetings to come. We are going to have a very busy fall. So thank you. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. And in Greenville, with that, I will hand it back over to Chair Lady Erickson to close us out.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair Crawford. We have had a busy day with a lot of good information. I've got a lot of notes. The first thing is thank you to the public who watched us online. I was getting a few text messages from folks back in Beaufort. That feels good to know that that they're paying attention when we're having meetings. I thank them for that. I hope other members got the same feedback. We are live streaming our meetings so that anyone can watch them. The next meeting, if everybody wants to write it on their calendar, will be on the 10th of September at 11 a.m. in Greenville. We'll be heading to the upstate, 11 a.m. Greenville, and I believe at the Technical College there is the location that we have worked out. So we'll see you in the upstate on the 10th of September. If you have any other comments, please remember SC House, EPW, that's our Education and Public Works, at schouse.gov. Please send us an email. Please let us know if we can do anything for you. Also, folks, remember that 511 app. It's real easy on your phone, and you can find even your travel information to see what roads are being affected if you so choose to do that. I know summer's wrapping up, but maybe there are a few more trips. And I know there's some football games getting planned coming up real soon. So until then, members, any questions, comments before we close? Hearing none. Make sure you see Lauren to sign your sheet for today, and we are adjourned. Thank you.